Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things, and welcome to episode 145.
So, Ben, in addition to this episode ending in 5, which I know there is a listener out there that heard 145 and just did that thing where they touch their face and go, ah, ha, ha, ha. But what do you know about music theory? You probably know way more than I do, so I'm teeing this question up.
Can I tell a 10-second anecdote? So my son teaches piano lessons this week, and he was teaching a 9-year-old kid piano, and the kid, I guess, was skeptical about the music theory my son was teaching him, and he goes, does this even apply to other instruments? And my son looked at him and said, yes, all of them.
Yeah, the piano is all the instruments, I thought.
I also play the piano, and I've studied a great deal of music theory.
I love that when I come asking, like, oh, Ben's not going to know anything about this, and then you know something about this. And then when I come saying, oh, Ben probably knows about this, it's like, oh, let me tell you an anecdote about that very thing that happened this week. I can't win. So
you knew I know about music.
I know you know about music. So what I found was 1-4-5 is a very common chord structure for guitar playing that happens in pop, rock, blues, jazz, soul, like all the music. And I guess it's just, I know what a chord is kind of. You just hold 3 notes and then strum the thing and then move it to the same 3 notes somewhere else on the neck and then strum it again. And then you chain them together and all of a sudden you have a song.
Yeah, most songs follow that pattern.
Well, 1-4-5. So 1 is C, 4 is F, and 5 is G. So a CFG chord apparently is incredibly popular in music. I know very little about music.
I think we had some follow-up from last episode. Josh, I think you need to set the record straight on your man crush.
I do. Just in case there's some hardcore stalker out there that's keeping track of our celebrity crushes and our hall pass list. It's Alexander Skarsgård, not Eric Skarsgård, okay? Oof. Alexander Skarsgård is like an angelic human being as long as you don't hear him in an interview. And I don't even know who Eric Skarsgård is. No, for real. My wife and I both were watching...
It's his little brother.
It's his little brother. All right, so
I don't know.
Alexander Skarsgård was the star of the latest Tarzan movie, and I don't know if you've seen it, but we watched it together, and we were both drooling over this guy. But then we watched some bonus extras somehow, and he was giving an interview like a normal human being. And Ben, he's so dumb. He's so dumb. And both of us were so like the illusion was shattered.
Isn't it a blessing in the world that people don't roll natural 20s on all the attributes when they build their character sheet?
I mean, yeah, that is true. And at the same time, all I can imagine is if he ever showed up at our front door, he would like to inhale and open his mouth to speak, and both of us would stick the one finger out to his lips like, no, don't talk.
I love that you've imagined this through to the point where in some imaginary universe, Alexander Skarsgård is knocking on the front door of your house in Phoenix.
Ben, I keep $50 cash in my wallet just in case I need to throw it at my kids to get them out of the house. There, go somewhere, spend money.
All right, let's do a little bad at cybersecurity segment, Josh.
Oh, Ben, you're going to make me tell this story. Okay, you haven't heard this story yet either. I'm loath to tell it. So, I am the kind of person that is constantly making fun of people that fall for Nigerian prince scams. Because how can you fall for this obvious attempt to separate you from your hard-earned money? This is such a thin
the
veneer.
Schadenfreude is so delicious.
I know, right? So, there I was last month. I don't even know what I was looking at. I was like scrolling through Facebook or something. Oh, you know what it was? I was catching up on the comments that all of our listeners leave on the Bad at Magic Facebook page. Anyway, and then I see an ad. I saw an ad in Facebook, a paid-for promoted ad in Facebook for an LGS in Michigan that is going out of business, and they're trying to liquidate their stock.
Okay. That stands for local game store people. That means Josh thinks he could get some of the really expensive nerd stuff for cheap. I see why that would be appealing to you.
And I was like, let's take a look. And I clicked into the website, and Ben, it was legit. It had like a legit URL. All of the pages worked. All the links on all of the pages worked. And what really did it is it had a ticking timer. It's like, oh, the sale ends in like 17 hours and 42 minutes. And it was a consistent countdown from page to page. And every time I navigated to a new page, the number of things in stock was decreasing. And the markdowns, Ben, holy crap! The markdowns.
So you were doing a little bit of a legitimacy check on their ad to be like, is this really, or is this just fake emergency, fake
because
urgency?
It was like, this seems scammy. Because immediately, right? Rule number 0, it was too good to be true. They were selling Modern Horizons 3 boxes for like $70 or something.
Those that get snapped up in 10 seconds and be all gone.
But this is the thing. Every time I refresh the page, 5 more of their inventory went away.
Have they reached that point?
All right. So here's the thing. Here's what happened, Ben. Here's what happened. I saw this happening, and it was just good enough, like I'm talking about, that it passed the legitimacy test. Like, not enough. Like, for a second, I went to my bank's website. I'm like, is there a way? Does my bank do the thing where I can get a disposable debit card number real quick, like just to make sure? But my bank doesn't, which sucks. I should probably get one of those.
This is an interesting thing. Like so you have 2 meters creeping up. One is the how bad I want this thing, and the other is just below it is like, but how much do I think it's a scam? And you're recognizing you're willing to take on more risk to find out if it isn't a scam.
That was the gamble. And I knew I was walking up to the craps table. I'm like, all right, if I win, I get $700 worth of product for $150. If I lose, I've got to change my credit card number and all of the pain in the butt that comes with it. And I rolled those dice and I lost. Because the checkout process, like the whole thing, super legit the whole way through, but then it wouldn't complete for some reason. Like something got hung up. It's like, oh, there's an error. Try again in a minute or whatever.
Oh, no.
But like it was giving me crap like, oh, well, the website's not going. Okay, this is probably a scam. And then I get a text message, a fraud alert. I'm like, oh, look, somebody's trying to hit my card 16 times in the last 36 seconds. Okay, yeah, this was a really good automated scam. And so I had to cancel the card, and I had to get a new one, and I had to update all of our subscriptions, which honestly is probably something you should do every year to make you go through. Like, okay, do we still really need this thing?
Whoa. Is there a name to this kind of scam?
I don't know, but I went back to the website, and what I found was if I refresh my cookies and go back to the website, the timer that had 17 hours and some odd minutes on it resets to that 17 hours and some odd minutes.
Yeah, and it's ticking down the inventory as well.
The quantity, if you clear the cookies, resets back up to a little over 100, and every time you refresh the page, it goes down by between 3 and 5. But I sat there, I was like, and I kept refresh, until it ticked down by 3, 4, 5, and it kept going down.
Every time you refresh.
Until it got to 1. And then every time I refreshed, it just said 1.
Okay, so, man, I have like 100 questions about this. The subset of humans that they're targeting if they're trying to sell you Modern Horizons 3 boosters is kind of small.
It had every...
That's not even all of our listening audience.
Well, yes, it was really targeting. Like, it was very, very focused. This was a very high-tech spear phishing scheme with a paid, promoted ad on Facebook that was targeting TCG players.
I always report those on Facebook. I don't know if that makes any difference, but it still offends me that a platform that I am supposed to be able to trust is taking money from people that are trying to use their platform to scam me. I'd like to think that they care enough that they would immediately cancel that, even if they're taking money from that person.
Oh, hey, by the way, this person that is paying you are active criminals. I don't know how much you care about that. I reported the ad too, but I don't think the ad ever went away. I don't think it's going to stop.
Yeah, so there was one I saw for a while that I found really offensive that I used to report it every time I would see it. And I think the fact that I was reporting it was counting it as me being interested in it, so it kept sending it to me. It was very specifically this. It was a little kit that is like an internal combustion engine.
Oh, okay.
Made out of like aluminum billet, and you assemble it and turn the crank, and you can see all the cylinders going up and down and the valves opening and lifting. And they say in the ad they're going to sell it to you for like $50. Those kits cost $600. And when and this is a different kind of scam. They're not just trying to get your credit card so they can like give you fraudulent charges. They sucker you in with a $50 ad and try to sell you a $600 product.
Okay.
And there's no universe in which they're ever trying to sell it to you for $50. It's just that's what it says in the ad.
Of course. That's misleading advertising, whereas...
Yeah, and that's illegal in the United States, but the internet blurs all those lines.
Yeah. Well, this place was clearly in China. I can tell you from all the fraud alerts I got on my credit card. And all I can think of is that these guys just do this until the platform bans their ads, and then they just move to a different platform. And then when all of the platforms are done, they just change the name of the LGS and all of their source code, change the URL, and then start over.
Did you incur... So aside from the extra effort you had to put into like changing your credit card number and stuff like that, did you incur any financial loss?
No. This the fraud protection of my bank is very, very good, and they were on top of it. Like, this, I guess it's either from a known bad source or a bad,
or the pattern
company.
Triggered their internal monitoring.
Something happened where, again, it's an arms race between scammers and people trying to stop the scamming. And ultimately, I think the banks have the highest level of, they want to make sure that this is good, because they're stuck in the worst position where either we have to fork over money out of our pockets to make our customers whole again, or we tell our customers to pound sand at the risk of them going to some other bank.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example where the incentives are aligned properly, I think.
Yeah.
Because if the banks are like, well, we make money no matter what, even if these guys get scammed, then we just stick them with it.
That's not good for anybody.
Like Facebook in this instance.
Yeah. Thanks, Facebook. Is there another platform we can move all of our comments and pictures to? I mean, we have the Reddit, but nobody uses Reddit. We just have it because we're old.
We should look into that. Listeners, if you have a suggestion, it's great. I like Facebook for the convenience of being able of just the creature comforts that already exist.
Oh, we're old, Ben. We're comfortable with Facebook. There's probably 6
don't
social
make me
media
change
platforms.
Josh. We don't make enough money doing this.
We're supposed to be on Snapchat or Instagram or something, but I think that's Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha has a new thing. And so either we're constantly having to move and pivot, but we don't, like you said, we don't make enough money to warrant this kind of research or effort. I would say we should make a TikTok if I wasn't sure that was going to go away at some point in the future.
All right, Josh. I'm sorry you fell for the scam and the extra trouble that took. You went into it kind of wary, and it turned out reinforcing some of the beliefs and suspicions you already had. Let me ask you this. Did you take a bit of an ego hit? Because you kind of opened this by saying, I'm the guy that always mocks other people for falling for these things, but you're admitting that you fell for it. Have you adjusted your humility stat?
A bit, because you sent me something earlier this week that was like, look at this ridiculous, obvious scam. And I typed out a whole response with like, who are the types of people that fall for this nonsense? And then I realized that was me, and I deleted it. And then I sent you something that had a little bit more grace in it.
Okay, good. That's great external evidence of adjusting your humility stat. Okay, so your story transitions perfectly into what I want to talk about. So I work for a company where we consume telemetry from our customers' cybersecurity devices at all levels of their network, on the boundary, on the servers, and at the endpoints. And all of those things are generating logs all the time of all the events that are happening. Someone types in their password wrong. Somebody tries to access a port, whatever. All of that's just spitting out information where the systems themselves don't know anything or care about it. But our system consumes all that, like you said about your bank, and looks for patterns. And some patterns are really obviously nefarious activity.
This is the big data problem, because listeners, I did computer stuff. Logs from security, any log from any computer is unreadable by a human being, and it's going to be 4 million lines long.
Yeah. So our company ingests trillions of these a day that all go into our Amazon Web Services data buckets, and then we're using automation to filter out the most suspicious ones, and at the very bottom level we're conducting investigations that involve intelligent human beings that correlate these different events and try to pinpoint actual nefarious cyber activity. I bring up all of that because I'm a little bit wary of the fact that I put myself in an industry where I'm depending on the bad guys for my livelihood.
Okay. I can
Like
see that.
you're not like that. Your work doesn't depend on there being people trying to commit crimes.
You're right. You're almost an insurance agency. The reason that people pay you is because bad things happen.
Right. And if bad things stop, if the bad guys stopped doing it tomorrow, my job would go away, like overnight. And if we ever got so good at stopping them,
oh no! Talk about misaligned incentives. You're talking about we cured cancer in 1950, Ben, but they don't want the medicine to get out because it's more profitable to treat it.
Did you see that movie back in 2001 with Tim Robbins and Ryan Phillippe called Antitrust?
Maybe I don't remember. 2001 was a very long time ago.
Okay, so the plot of Antitrust was that Ryan Phillippe plays this brilliant young programmer who's working for a security company, is getting attention from all the people that follow brilliant young programmers. And he starts getting courted by this character played by Tim Robbins that's supposed to be Bill Gates.
Okay.
He works for the largest software company in the world, and he wants the up-and-coming, hot-shot young programmers to come work for his company. And as he comes in, he starts to feel like something's not quite right. And what it turns out, the spoilers for Antitrust 2001, this software company is basically creating a virus because they have all the best programmers that will attack all the computers that don't have their software.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. I love that. That's so neutral evil. It's fantastic. It's
and that's kind of the main plot. I mean, there's other stuff going on. It's not a great movie, but it was kind of prescient for 2001. Now, I'm not suggesting that at all. It just gives me this weird feeling in my gut. Our mission is to end cyber risk, and our customers pay us exorbitant amounts of money because there's bad guys trying to break into them. And one of the most common scams right now that just came out of our annual report, you can download it from arcticwolf.com, is data extortion and data ransoms, where they use a common exploit or a business email compromise to break into your network, and then we either encrypt some of your files and tell you can't get access to your data until you pay us, or we take some of it out of your network and we send you little bits of it and say, unless you pay us money, we're going to leak it to the public.
That happened to all of the MGM hotel chain in Las Vegas, like a year ago now? Where they were shut down for over a week because all of their main systems had been infiltrated by some hacking group, and they encrypted everything over one night, and everybody tried to show up to work the next day, and none of the computers worked. It's like, hey, you guys owe us some, I don't know, 8 or 9 digit number before we turn all your computers back on.
So in the annual report that we just published, the average ransom payout for a data extortion crime is around $600,000.
Oof.
That's average.
Ouch.
And because people pay. Because ultimately it's just a business decision. If you say, do I pay this bad guy $600,000 to get my data back, assuming they're going to do what they say they're going to do after I give them the money, or do I spend $1 million to recover?
Well, and that's the thing.
How long is that going to take, and how much is that going to cost me in lost business in the time it takes me to fix it?
So as your company grows, you should have a increasingly robust data protection scheme, right? So I work at a small company. Our data protection scheme is we have every 24 hours there's a backup that gets run on our cloud storage, whatever.
That goes to a remote location.
Yeah, and so we can roll everything back one day. And that's good enough. But if you're that's all outsourced. Like you get to a certain size, you can't outsource the crap.
Then let me give you a scenario that you can't hand wave away with your current policies. Like that's the answer to everything. Okay. Let's say you did get infiltrated, just like you said about MGM, and instead of losing all your customers' tax files or about that, let's say they take it hostage and say, we're going to leak your customers' financial information to the public. Are you willing to pay then?
So I don't have the checkbook for the company, so I don't know.
Right. I sorry, that was kind of confrontational. Or let's say you come in and your computers are just non-functioning. Are you willing to just throw them all out the window, go buy new computers, and restore from your backup? Or are you willing to pay less than that to get it back?
And that's the real question, right? And so this is why these guys have to go after bigger-ish companies that may or may not actually have a giant, robust, emergency fallback.
Yeah.
Because having the kind of infrastructure where you could flip a giant switch on the wall and bring everybody back online on a backup system is very expensive to maintain.
Yeah, that's it. It's just a how much does it cost? Does it cost less to pay the bad guys than it does to have the giant switch on the wall? Then I guess I'll pay the bad guys.
Hey, Ben, if you're going to keep name dropping the company you work for, can we at least get like a sponsorship deal from them?
Well, speaking of sponsorships, this podcast is sponsored by the United States Air Force.
All right, listeners, that's an inside joke with me and Ben. So I don't know if anybody knows this, but Ben recently retired from the Air Force. And completely apropos nothing, he logs on to our video call to do our podcast today, decked out head to toe in Air Force propaganda. They got an Air Force hat. He's got Air Force hoodie on. And then he just happens to mention in passing. So I used to be in the Air Force. To me, where we met.
All right, Josh, I got one other follow-up item. This is, we'll call it bad innovation. This is specifically related to an anecdote that I told you that was wrong. So I was wrong on the internet again, but we do that every 2 weeks here on the Bad at Magic podcast. You know the song by the Bare Naked Ladies, It's All Been Done. The idea is that, like, you can't do anything new because humans have been around for so long, everything's been done before. Which is fine. You can make that case, but there's so much new stuff to be done that is an iteration on the stuff that's been done before, that's better and improving and, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants. And I don't remember the context in which this came up. It was maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago. But I mentioned to you that back in the late 1800s, the United States patent office closed because the commissioner decided that everything had already been invented. And you were like, no, I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, it's true. It's actually not true. I'm sorry I said that.
You made up a whole thing. Freaking Mark Twain style.
Okay, if you want to say that, that's fine. I'll give you the history of that because I did figure that part out.
Okay.
So apparently, back in 1987, some speechwriter for Ronald Reagan had heard that and put it in one of his speeches.
Okay. This is
Here's
one
what
of those,
Ronald.
Oh, this is one of those unattributable quotes that somebody said back in the day that you can never trace back to the source, and it just lives in people's memories as a thing.
Yes, exactly.
The oral history of humanity.
There's this quote attributed to Charles H. Dewey, the U.S. Patent Commissioner, 1899, that everything that can be invented has been invented. And whoever wrote this speech for Ronald Reagan went as far to say this. I found the actual quote from the Reagan speech. The year before the century began, the head of the Patent Office told the President of the United States that, in his words, everything that can be invented has been invented, and proposed closing the Patent Office. So even in his speech, he didn't say the Patent Office actually closed, and maybe that actually happened. I can't find any original source material that attributes that one way or the other. But it doesn't say in that speech that the Patent Office is closed, and the rumor mill, the myths, the urban legend, the old wives' tales behind that have grown to the point where you say the Patent Office is closed. It never did.
It was probably closed one President's Day, and then somebody tried to show up, like, I guess they invented all the things. And then somebody's like, that's a snarky joke. I'm going to use that. And then it just turned into a thing.
There you go. Simplest explanation is usually Occam's razor. This is called the Mandela effect. It's named that after Nelson Mandela, who for some reason people thought he died in prison, but he got released from prison, went on to be the president of South Africa, and so it's named after that. But it's a slightly different. It's like this fact that people think it's true that they pass on to other people. I want to call it the Dewey echo. This is a Dewey echo. Dewey was the Patent Office Commissioner.
Why don't we just call it what it is? You're wrong. You were wrong. This was wrong. People are wrong constantly. Just own it. Don't try to attribute it to some fancy-sounding thing that makes you sound like an intellectual. You were wrong.
All right. So I was wrong on the internet. Happens every time we publish an episode. But this got me thinking about a really in-depth explanation of this, which was an article Malcolm Gladwell published in the New Yorker back in November 2004. I wasn't reading the New Yorker in 2004. He later published it in a collection of his articles from the New Yorker called What the Dog Saw in 2009. That's what I read. In this article, he gives the saga of something that he wrote that another author kind of used in a play that they published, and then he got embroiled in this copyright claim against the author, and he went full circle. When he first found out about it, he jumped on board and helped file this copyright claim on them, but after he saw what the author created, and he considered the idea of the Bare Naked Ladies song, It's All Been Done, like how no one actually ever has a unique original thought. It's all a combination of things you've seen and heard that other people have done and you've read and experienced. And art is taking all of that and making something new.
Interpreting it and changing it.
Yeah.
Putting your spin on it. That's the whole free use part of copyright. And
so eventually the legal process kind of ended up on autopilot and it was out of his control and he kind of regretted the whole thing. Like he liked what the lady made that was derived from what he'd produced.
Hang on. The legal process went on copyright. The lawyers just decided to keep arguing. Both parties like, no, we're good. We resolved it. The lawyer's like, no. We're going to keep fighting and billing you for it.
I don't remember all the details of it. If you want to read the article, I'll publish a link in the show notes. Here's a quote from the end of the piece called, "Should a charge of plagiarism ruin your life? By the time the ideas pass into their third and fourth lives, we lose track of where they came from, and we lose control of where they're going. The final dishonesty of the plagiarism fundamentalists is to encourage us to pretend that these chains of influence and evolution do not exist, and that a writer's words have a virgin birth and an eternal life."
Well, that's not true either. Like the whole reason we have trademarks and copyrights and like intellectual property protections is not to punish people that are trying to put things out into the world, but is to encourage people to share their original thoughts and ideas with the world. Because like if somebody's hoarding something, like Microsoft comes up with the next new thing, but they don't want to put it out because they're afraid somebody's going to reverse engineer and put it out for half the price, which happens anyway, then nobody's benefited. But if we, in a structured legal system, protect the person that created this thing and tell them, hey, you can profit from this for the first however many years, that's reasonable, Disney, then go ahead and put it out and share it with the world. Make the world a better place. And then after you're done with it, Disney, let the world just benefit from it being.
Yeah. I think ultimately what he's saying there in that quote that I read is that there's this illusion, this fake idea that you can somehow create a completely new idea that isn't derived from anything, and that's just false.
It's interesting. I think there's a passage in the book that I'm reading that talked about that exact effect earlier today.
Really?
Yeah, it was something Brandon Sanderson.
Was it?
Brandon Sanderson made his universe-hopping storytelling characters say that. It's like there's nothing like before. Like people have been around forever, and we have all thought thoughts, and we've all said things. We've said everything. And then before us was the dragons, and before the dragons were the gods. Everything's been done like 100 times before. And then his spin on it was, yes, there are no new ideas, but the idea becomes new when you first think of it for the first time.
And that's what Malcolm Gladwell was saying. He said the dishonesty of the plagiarism fundamentalists is pretending that isn't what's happening. And I agree with him. I think that art isn't creating something new that never existed. It's creating something from all the things that exist that's new in its own way, that's unique and interesting and fundamentally different enough to be their own creation.
Well, obviously, there is nothing new. I talked about this on an episode of the podcast. There's the Library of Babel. Right now, you can go to a website and look up anything. Type in anything. Your birth date followed by your social security number followed by a 86,000-word essay about how you are going to die. It exists in the Library of Babel, I promise you. Also, I learned this week. I thought this was fascinating. Pi. Remember, pi, the ratio, the ratio of a diameter to the circumference of a circle? Yeah, the number. One of the key fundamental numbers in the universe at 3.15129 going on forever without repeating. The fact that pi never repeats means that if you assign a character to each of the different number values, everything in the universe that ever has, could, or will exist is also encoded into pi. Ben, all knowledge that could ever be is a part of one of the fundamental numbers that explains the functioning of the universe. That's the kind of crap.
In a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal.
No. In a non-repeating, non-determinate decimal that is fundamental to our understanding of the universe. That's the kind of crap that makes me think that we're in some kind of simulation or there's a glitch in the matrix somewhere.
Okay. But Josh, just so I wasn't alone, I appreciate that you just said pi was 3.15, and the recording will show that that's what you said.
Did I say the wrong decimals for pi?
Yeah, you rattled off 6 numbers, and you're wrong by the third one.
Was it really 3.14159?
Yeah, but the recording will vindicate me. You'll see.
Listeners, don't at me. I don't use pi every day. I'm an accountant.
Josh, what does bad at appliances mean?
Oh, Ben, do you ever have
that was a long sigh.
One of those really awful, rotten, terrible, no good days? I had one of those last week.
I've spent $550 trying to get my new radio to work in my car.
So you can commiserate with this. Okay. So I was having a terrible, no good, just awful day. And to cap it all off, my kids were doing the dishes and they say the dishwasher won't close. What do you mean the dishwasher won't close? Close it. Like, it won't close. And I went to the dishwasher and I'll be darned if it wouldn't close. Like, you just push it in where the latch is supposed to grab it, and then it would just pop right back open. Just gave up on life. Just didn't want to do its thing anymore. Like, and that's the simplest thing in the world, right? Just close. Just close. Dishwasher, close. I need you to wash my dishes. But it wouldn't. And Ben, listen, I tried everything. I tried pushing it. I tried pushing it real hard. I tried hip checking it. I tried pushing it real hard and then holding it there. I tried putting a screwdriver into the latch mechanism and jiggling it. And it wouldn't stay shut.
Were the kids standing around watching you? Please tell me they were.
No, they left at that
point.
point.
You idiots! It's easy. Watch this.
This was one of those. This was not one of those times where I was like, let me solve this problem. This is one of those times where everyone could feel the mounting frustration, and so people were like, I'm gonna back away from this geyser before it busts.
Yeah.
And like it ended at like 9:30 at night with me Googling the serial number of my dishwasher to try to find a replacement latch or strike to fix this. Like, it's got to be the latch. It has to be the latch. It could be nothing else. It has to be the latch. And so I find this website. I'm going to order the new part. The part's going to come in. I am not afraid to replace parts inside of appliances. They're not difficult. And so I ordered this part. But for a week, I'm having my kids wash dishes by hand, which honestly actually is kind of a good parenting thing. Makes them really appreciate the dishwasher. It also forced them to work side by side next to each other every night for like 20 minutes while they're hand washing all the dishes.
All kinds of positive externalities with that one.
Yeah, they will appreciate the dishwasher now that it works again. And so we wait 6 days and the part finally comes in. And so I open the front of the dishwasher, I replace the part, easy as pie, put it back together. All right, this is going to fix it for sure. Shut it with authority and confidence, and it popped right back open. And, oh, man.
I love it.
Oh, the mounting, the rage, Ben, the rage. We've been out without a dishwasher for a week. You have one job. You have one job. So I finally broke down, and so I'm
sorry I'm so gleeful about this, but this is delicious.
That night I find a local appliance repair guy. I queue up a text message into my phone because I do not text service guys at 9:00 at night. That's not cool. Don't do that. I waited until 8 a.m. the next day and I fired off my text. Hey, I live here. I have this problem. Can you fix it for me? He's like, sure, I can be there Friday, which was 2 days ago.
This is like the IT guy that drives an hour to reboot your computer for you.
Ben. All right, so it's tax season, right? I cannot step away from work to sit at home for that 4-hour window where the guy's going to show up in the last 5 seconds of it. I can't. So it was going to be my wife that has to be here to get the dishwasher guy. And so the night before, we told the kids, hey, the dishwasher repair guy's coming tomorrow, so unload the dishes that we had loaded in the dishwasher a week ago, wash them by hand, and put them all away so the dishwasher's empty and clean and ready for him to service. And they do that, and everything's fine. And then the next day, my wife is in the house. She's working from home that day, and she's like just tidying up the kitchen because the appliance repair guy is going to see the fact that we live in our house, and that's unacceptable. But while she's in there, she opened the dishwasher to make sure there was no dishes in it, and then shut it, and then walked away, and then stopped, and then turned back, and it stayed shut. And she tried. She said, she called me that moment, and she was on the phone. She's like, the dishwasher's fine. What do you mean the dishwasher's fine? And she opened and shut it like 6 times, and it just stays shut. And so there was enough time beforehand. I texted the guy like, hey, turns out we don't need you. Thanks for coming on so short notice. Like, oh yeah, no problem. Have a great one. I think he was just happy not to have one less appointment on a Friday.
Okay.
But like all we can think of, and the only thing that I can think of is one of the things that was in the dishwasher was our crock pot, which is really heavy. And all I can think is somehow that was throwing off the balance just enough to make the door not want to stay shut, or it was leaning back for some reason. Like, I don't know what happened, Ben, but my wife magicked the dishwasher to working condition again, and I'm completely baffled by how it happened.
So the load of dishes that was in it when Carter tried to close it the first time and it wouldn't, stayed in there for a week?
This is kind of exposing a little bit about my internal life, but no, it's not like they were smelly. Like, so
they will be after a week.
My wife and I were both trained by the school of thought that the dishes need to be absolutely spot clean before they go into the dishwasher.
Okay, I got it. So your dishwasher mostly just sanitizes and dries.
Essentially.
Okay.
We brush clean. Like, the only thing we don't do when we're putting dishes in the dishwasher is put soap on them. Like, we get all the food, everything off it. Like, they were essentially pretty clean in there. And once you shut it, we both work full-time jobs. Ben, don't come at me for this, okay? My kids are 13 and 10, and they're not going to do a great job. I'm working all day. My wife's working all day. Like, we have enough dishes to get through the day. Why?
Okay.
Why you got to call me out for my disgusting habits of leaving dishes in the dishwasher dirty for a week?
Just checking. Let's talk about our husbanding for a minute. Do you want to go first, or do you want me? Because you and I both submitted a bad at husbanding segment this time.
Let's do your bad at husbanding and see who's the worst husband this week.
All right. So, I decided to get married pretty young. And even though I thought I knew everything back then, I look back on that guy 26 years ago that got married when he was 22 and thought he knew everything. I look back at some really painful lessons I've learned over those 26 years. But underlying the success of being where we are now is one of my internal values. And that is that I treat being a husband like anything, like I do disc golf or magic, in that I'm willing to accept criticism and I want to get better. So I welcome it.
Oh, give me feedback, spouse.
I treat it like a hobby, something I want to get better at. I want my average to be coming down over time. And I definitely don't ever want to get to a point where I'm like, that's good enough.
Listeners, Ben is talking about disc golf, where you want your average score to decrease, as opposed to everything else in life where you want it to go up as you go in time. Okay, sorry, right. Continue.
I've kind of approached my role as a husband that way. I want my wife to be happy to be married to me. I want her to feel good about me as her husband. I want to still be attracted to her. I want our relationship to feel good. And I'm avoiding a bad outcome I've seen modeled in people that are very close to me, where they just reach a level of comfort and then stop improving and just are stuck. And they don't seem to like each other very much, and they don't seem to get along, and they don't really do anything together. But because they both decided they're never going to go anywhere else, it's just a crappy relationship forever. And that seems miserable to me.
Yeah, that's no bueno.
Because of that underlying desire to improve, sometimes it will help me with things that people sometimes struggle with. Like, I'll give you an example that men can usually, when there's no women in earshot, will usually agree is stupid, of having to put the toilet seat down.
Oh, Ben. Oh, you picked the wrong person to talk to about this. Okay, so I am so far on the other end of this argument that I just sit all the time now. Like, I'm never, you can nail down all the toilet seats in my house and I would notice no difference.
Please tell me you're making that up just to be funny.
I am not. It's a more relaxing bathroom experience. I don't know what to tell you.
Josh, I did not see that coming. Now wait, I've been in a bathroom at the same time as you in like the last calendar year. Is it, if it's a urinal, then you don't sit down?
Oh well, yeah. If there's a urinal, of course I'm not going to go
all right
to go pee. Like, but at my house, there's girls in the house, and also we have cats, so we got to keep all the toilet seats down all the time, or else they'll be in there. Like, there's reasons, okay? And
okay,
shut up. Like, again, you're coming at me for personal decisions. It feels personal.
So So my wife's out of town right now for a week. She took a vacation. I'm taking care of all the household stuff.
And you removed,
I can make
removed
deposits.
all the toilet seats?
I can make deposits in this bank for the next 26 years and never catch up because I spent 1,300 days away, in the United States Air Force over the last 20 years.
Yes, fair.
So I got the house to myself for a week, and in our bedroom that's ensuite in our bathroom, our ensuite bathroom in our bedroom, I've been leaving the toilet seat up. That's it. Just my wife cares about that when she's here, and so I do it, not because I think it makes sense, but because I love her enough to do this small thing that she's asking me to do. It's a sign of love between me and her.
You're right. We do need to talk more about this, but I'm going to let you tell your story first.
And so I went up there today, and I was kind of in a hurry, and I pulled my drawers down, and I sat right on the porcelain and almost fell in. And there was no one around, and I was just laughing. I was like, that was so stupid and completely my fault.
And now you know why your wife asks you to put the toilet seat down.
I was so close to going right in the water, but I felt the cold porcelain on my skin. I was like, whoa, I cannot believe I did that.
That's hilarious. All right. So I love how this argument is always phrased, and you brought it up perfectly. It's like, the unending argument between men and women, where women want men to put the toilet seat down, and men are telling women, "Who cares? Just put it down before you use it." And like, it's an equal amount of effort on either side. I think everybody agrees it's an equal amount of effort, regardless of the scenario, right? Either I put it down every time, or you put it down every time. And so then. All right, if it's equal effort on all sides, then the question you have to ask yourself is like, okay, so who's benefiting? And I want my wife to benefit from everything that I do all the time forever. I always want to be putting that penny into the piggy bank every time I get the opportunity. And so this is just one more teeny tiny little thing. Like, and if it takes equal effort on both of us, I want to be the one spending the effort instead of her.
I love that, Josh. I'm so glad you said that way. You're worthy of emulation. Listeners, be like Josh in your relationships. How is what you said different than what I said? I'm curious.
Well, because I don't know, the way that you phrased it, it sounded like, do you also, like, when your wife is there, you put the toilet seat down all the time?
Yes.
Right now, your wife is not there, but you still have girls that live in your house. Do you use
talking about my ensuite bathroom.
That's the only one that you leave the seat up on for this week.
Yeah, but it's really the only one I use that way.
Okay. So how is this not, like, you've been married for how long? 26 years or something you said earlier? Okay, so you've been married 26 years. How is this still a conscious thought in your brain that, I can leave the toilet seat up?
I'll tell you what it is, and I'm walking on thin ice here, so stop me if I get too far from the shore.
Okay.
There was something happened a couple weeks ago. You know how it is, like, if your brain cycles are kind of low and you're busy and something's happening, you're likely to make small mistakes in your life. Yep. So there was one, maybe two times consecutively where I forgot.
Okay.
And she hit me with it like she was sandbagging it. Like, you never do what I say or whatever.
Ooh, it was a bullet in the gun of a bigger argument.
Yeah, and I was like, I make a great effort to do this. I forgot once. I'm sorry I forgot, but I don't want to answer for the sin. I don't want to answer for Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden because I left the toilet seat up one time.
Okay, careful. You're starting to stray from the shore, but I get what you're saying.
Thanks.
This is so it's So part of this, I'm going to put blame on both of you a little bit, okay? Like, nobody's to blame. Like, we're talking about there's 100% blame to go around. 60% of that is just the universe being unfair. And each of you need to accept 20% of this blame, okay? And here's what I'm going to say is, one, again, 26 years, this should be so ingrained as muscle memory that it's not even a conscious thought.
I can't even replay what happened the time that I forgot, but it definitely wasn't like me putting my middle finger up to her. I forgot.
That's the 20% that she's got to accept, is that this is clearly a confirmation bias. Think back of the 26 years of marriage and how many times has this actually happened versus how many times you remember it happening. It's a bell curve. Ben's probably on the safe side of the bell curve. But at the same... So, after I saying all this, I'm going to say that I'm on the highest road over here. Ben, just sit. Just sit every time. It takes lifting or putting it down.
Then you don't even accidentally forget.
It's relaxing. It's restful. You can use your phone with two hands. Like, it's just good for everything.
That was perfect. All right, Josh, it's your turn.
Okay, so... I don't know how much setup this requires. I'm going to do as little as possible just because nobody cares about the setup. My son is in the middle school band, and he has friends that are in the middle school band, okay? And one of his friend's mom's name is Nicole. That's important.
Spelled the same way as your wife? Because your wife's spelling is uncommon.
Literally the first sentence of my story, and you're already shooting holes in it. Yes, the spelling is different. Okay, so other Nicole, friend's mom, has some event that she's going to go to, and she is unable to take her child to this band event that is happening at the high school, okay? And she asks us, because our kids are friends, hey, do you mind taking my kid over to this thing, and I will be there after it starts, and I will take him home. And we're like, sure, no problem. Kids are friends. They hang out all the time. We know this kid. He's a great kid. And so she drops off the kid at our house early. Our kids play for a while, and then we all get in the car and we mosey on over to the high school for this band event that is happening. And it was a cool event. It was like the high school feeder band event, and so like all the different elementary schools that feed in this high school, their band played those. Something.
They're really putting on their best show to get the kids hyped about being in high school band.
Well, the middle school kids did their performances, and then not the regular high school band, but like the three different bands that you have to audition into at the high school. Yeah. They all did their thing.
The concert band, the jazz band, and the whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Their symphonic band did a whole Phantom of the Opera bit with an actual like full up organ and everything. And I told my wife I'd never seen Phantom of the Opera, and she about slapped me in the stands at that event.
I've never seen Phantom of the Opera.
We had to watch Phantom of the Opera today. That's where I was before the podcast. Anyway, so before it all started, our kids are setting up. They're getting their seats ready, and he's got his instrument. So I stood up off to the side and did the embarrassing dad thing. Because I'm 6'4", and then I stuck my hands way up in the air, and I was taking pictures of the kids up on the stage. And so then I sat back down. And she's like, oh, can you share this with me? I'm like, sure, no problem. And I go to my phone, and Samsung phones have this cool thing. I'm sure every phone has it, called Quick Share. So I selected a bunch of pictures, and I go to Quick Share, because I've done this with my wife before, and my Quick Share shows up, and it says, oh, Nicole, Samsung phone. Perfect. Click. And then we're sitting there, and my wife goes, hey, you going to send me those pictures of what? I'm like, I just did. She's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, yes, I did. And I pull up my phone. I'm like, you're right here. But when I looked at my phone the second time, now there's two Nicoles on my phone. One Nicole spelled the way my wife's name is spelled, and another Nicole. I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. So this must be your old phone or something. And so I pushed the new one, and then my wife got the pictures instantly. I'm like, great. And I put my phone back down. And then my phone buzzes, and I pick it up, and I get a text message. Oh, hey, from the other kid's mom, Nicole, the other Nicole. And she's like, oh, hey, thanks for sending me pictures of the kids. Did you take a video? And then I was looking at that for me like, the hell is she talking about? And I text her back like, are you texting the right person? As I didn't send you anything.
you put it back on her. Oh man.
Yeah, I did. And then
I didn't leave the toilet seat down. What are you talking about?
But then she comes back with the text like, you just shared a bunch of pictures with the little quick share thing. And I was like, oh, that was you. I thought that was my wife's phone.
Oh,
and
no.
then hilarity ensues and everything.
At least they weren't photos of a more sensitive nature.
Ben, that is the joke that I made immediately. Like, oh, I'm glad it was just pictures of the kids.
And hers was in the photo.
Yeah. Lucky.
That was lucky, a close one. Good job, Josh.
So, yes.
We're both bad at husbanding.
Listeners, always double check the spelling of your wife's name when you're sending photos into the ether.
That makes me wonder. That goes back to what you and I were talking about last time or the time before, we were talking about logical fallacies in math, and you were talking about the birthday paradox.
Yeah, the name lining up. That's another good one.
Yeah, exactly. In any person's friend circle, how likely are they to have like a person who has the same name as their spouse?
It can lead to some awkward moments.
Yeah. Especially if they're of similar generation, because the occurrence of names in a generation, if they're of common type, are much more likely.
Yeah, it's a cyclical thing. Yeah.
Like my wife has 6 friends named Heather. So yeah. That was I'm 7 years older than you. That was
Ben, I don't know anybody, and I know two Alicias.
Well, what are you reading right now, Josh?
Oh, Ben, I am just getting to the good parts of Knights of Wind and Truth.
Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, so last time you were a little bit hesitant. You're like, I'm not. It hasn't gotten good yet.
It was ramping up. There was a lot that had to happen.
You were anticipating it. You knew it was going to happen, but
I knew it was going to happen, and I'm starting to. It's starting to build. All the tension, all the cool reveals are starting to happen. This is all right. So, in this series of books, I keep talking about it intersects with all of his other works that he's done. He's building this one unified universe.
Yes,
and this is his flagship series.
Yeah. But this is also supposed to be the resolution of his first big plot arc, right?
Yes.
Like you're expecting some things to come together.
Well, and it feels this way because so in the first 4 books that we're reading, like we're getting bits and pieces and we're unraveling this big tapestry. But this one, he's just laying it out. Like I just listened to several chapters where we got the first person perspective of one of the dead gods of this planet. And so whereas the first book, we were dealing with one character's depression and him trying to overcome this like really difficult situation he was in. Now we're dealing with the death of a god on a planet and how that impacts the people that live there over the course of several thousand years. The scope has changed dramatically. And honestly, Ben, I'm a little sad about it. Like, it's like, oh, well, I don't really care about this dead god. I kind of want to know how Shallan's marriage is going.
Yeah, I remember having that problem in when I really get deep in a fantasy series and they got 5 plot lines going and they're spending too much time on the other ones than the one I'm most interested in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to bash it. It's still incredibly well written. There are several turns of phrase in there that I wish I write. Like, there are sometimes I will stop and I will write something down. Like, that is so clever. I want to say it in my conversations to somebody. And but I don't know. I just, the focus of the story is not where I want it to be. And so I'm interested to see how the Sanderlanche happens. Like, what's the, say the words Kaladin moment of this book? I'm waiting for that to happen. And then I want to see how this first big plot arc wraps up.
I enjoyed you said, I think last time you talked about the moments when the earlier in this episode, you were talking about 2 characters debating an issue that you felt like was transplanted in a modern problem, but in the context of the fantasy world and scenario and stuff like that. And one author I like that does that really well in a lot is Orson Scott Card. I like reading his books for that reason because he gives his characters unique personalities by letting them have political opinions and philosophical ideas that they express to each other.
Well, there are some really interesting, things are happening that are interesting. Don't get me wrong. Just because this book isn't a 10 out of 10 for me personally doesn't mean it's a bad book. There was this great chapter where a highly intellectual person who is very principled and, like, so far as we've seen, seems to be very solid in her opinions and her beliefs and puts her money where her mouth is, was perfectly dissected and taken apart and destroyed in a debate with an evil god. But it was really interesting to see all these things that have happened in these books, and you would point to this character and be like, yeah, that person is completely and totally consistent with their moral code. They know where they're at. They know where they stand. They know the decisions they're going to make, and they're happy with it. And then in the span of 1 chapter's worth of conversation, you realize, wow, she is kind of a hypocrite in this big glaring way, and it's been there the whole time. And it was just never noticed because that's how we think. We're like, oh, no, this is exactly what I would have done in that situation.
That's good that they can do that. I enjoy when authors do that and it doesn't feel like they were cheating.
Oh, yeah. And exactly. This was a deserved payoff. It's like, no, these things, he's referencing stuff that actually happened with 0 unknown information.
My daughter-in-law recommended a book to me for reasons. It's a nonfiction book. It's called The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom by Sherry Frankie. Now, some of you might already know her name. I didn't when I went into this, but it's kind of similar to books that I like to read. It's a memoir by a girl who's probably only like 20 years old about her life and growing up in a family that was a major like video blogging family on YouTube back in the early 2010s.
Okay.
So her mom was kind of getting popular as a mom blogger back when blogs were a big thing, and then when the advent of YouTube happened, they got on there, gained a big following, ended up with like over 1 million followers. They were making a ton of money and stuff like that. And this book is kind of about the life of being a kid in that family. And
is this
okay,
the one where two of the kids were like criminally abused or something?
yes.
Ooh, okay. I think my wife just watched this documentary.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was a documentary about it. I can watch it now and know the daughter's perspective on it. But yes, the mom is in jail for 25 years or something like that. And her friend that was also complicit in this, that comes in later. This is all told from the perspective of the girl. She's not a great writer, but that's one of the beauties of nonfiction. I'm not counting on her to be a good writer to tell the story. She's just saying what happened. So I don't need her to be a good writer. The story is interesting regardless of her writing skill. It's a lot of intersecting circles in my life. It happened here in Utah, not far from where I live now. She's an active member of my church. A lot of the things that happened, I'm being kind of vulnerable here, Josh, so take it easy on me. A lot of the things that happened are the toxic side of what happens when people take our beliefs too far.
Okay.
It's also... Okay, so Sherry Frankie was the oldest of 6 kids in this family. Their YouTube channel was called 8 Passengers. So her mom, for whatever toxic upbringing she had, felt like the only way she was going to have personal worth was by reproducing and showing her value as a mother. And so she took it too far. Like when she was raising her oldest daughter, she's like, I'm not going to love you or respect you until you do this too. Right. And so she just always felt starved for love and affection because her mother wouldn't respect her until she reproduced like she did. And then when all of these incentives came down from the mommy blogging and YouTube, she just dialed it up to 11 and made a bunch of money. And then it tracked this hanger-on, this weird lady with this weird new age like thinking and counseling method. She'd actually been had her professional certification revoked for breaking patient client privilege.
Oh, good. That's always a good indicator of a solid medical professional.
And then in the weird way, then this lady strikes up a romantic relationship with her mother and moves into their house while she's still married to her father and is living in her bedroom. So she gets kicked out of her bedroom. This lady's living in her bedroom. They're having a sexual relationship. The abuse is happening to her younger siblings. She's broken because she never felt loved by her mother, and then she starts getting groomed by a man 30 years older than her. And he's like, I'll be your knight in shining armor. And a married man in my church starts grooming her as like, I'll be the one that listens to you. I'm the only one that cares about you. I'm the only one that understands, and starts grooming her until it turns into a sexual relationship.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so icky.
Yeah.
So you've got all this toxic abuse that's happening. Meanwhile, every time it's all happening on camera. So there's this weird fake persona that everybody puts on when the cameras are rolling to keep the YouTube money rolling in. And then when it turns off, then mom doesn't love you and the daughter's broken and she's getting abused by this grown man. And what a mess. I read an article on Psychology Today that put all of this into perspective. And what it was how, if you're reading this book to feel better about what happened to you as an abused youth, you're not going to always get what Sherry Frankie gets at the end of this story. And that is, she worked with the police and child DCFS until they actually invaded the home, found the evidence of the abuse, prosecuted her mother in court, and sent her to jail.
And that is
all
the
gaslighting,
not the rule.
Right? All the gaslighting, all the lies, all the recriminations and circulation of blame and toxic behaviors, all that is kind of brushed aside in that a judge and jury in a court of law convicted your mother of criminal behavior. You're vindicated. You don't have to wonder if it was your fault or if everything your mother told you about how this is because of you was actually true. Anyway, I just finished reading it this morning. So
Oh, geez.
between that and the press conference yesterday, I was really depressed. So let's talk about something else.
Well, let's talk about something fun. Ben, let's do some bad gaming then.
That's good, because I think you had one from last time you were supposed to tell me about and we forgot. So,
oh, perfect. Yes. So my wife has done this a couple of times. She's all right. One of her love languages is gift giving, and she's a wonderful gift giver. And so a couple Christmases ago, she got us this card game from Disney, called Something Wild. And then this past Christmas, she got some expansions to it. And it's one of those games where it's all super modular. So you just like buy this box, and then it's got this flavor on it, and then you just jam it together with the rest of the boxes that you've previously purchased, and you just
what's the flavor? What's the hook?
All right, so the idea it's like a numbers matching game. Kind of like you get cards and then you have to make sets or runs. Like, I need to make 3 numbers of the same.
You could
color
play
in a
this
row.
with a game of like standard 52 card face cards almost.
Almost. There's more suits. I guess you put it that way. I think there's 6 suits, like 6 colors.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. But the shtick is that there is this pile of cards in the middle, and each that change the rules of the game. It's like, you have to have 3 cards of the same color if you're going to do a run. Like 3, 4, and 5 all got to be red. Unless you activate this special power card in the middle, which allows you to make 3s count as any color. Like, then you can have a blue 3 and then a red 4 and a 5, and then you can complete that and score. So each of these power cards in the center has its own stack, and each of the stacks is associated with a Disney character. And there are rules for how you have to steal the character. Like there's these little miniatures of that character, and you can steal it from people, and you have to play certain cards to steal this thing. And I have SpongeBob's power now. You all are screwed. And so
SpongeBob isn't Disney.
No, but he's one of the cards that's in this somehow.
That's interesting.
So the thing is, like, we got my wife just bought all these expansions for it, and so we sat down, we opened them all up. And so we were playing a game with Yoda, Darth Vader, Boba Fett, Indiana Jones, SpongeBob SquarePants, Ariel the Little Mermaid. Who else? There's a couple other characters that I'm forgetting because we didn't use them. But we had all of these characters out front. And so we're playing a really simple matching game with 7 different ways to change the rules that are all face up that you can steal from other players or try to optimize your own strategy. And like, I remember I took a picture of the board state and I texted you and was like, my wife played a 6 and stole Indiana Jones from me, and now all her 4s are any color.
Yeah, I saw that. And okay, so how did you feel about that from the perspective of the incongruent mixture of intellectual properties? Because we're going to talk about that in a second, related to Magic the Gathering.
So this is a silly little card game that I played with my 2 young children at a kitchen table, and I got to say really dumb phrases like, "No, I need SpongeBob. Stop activating Ariel's superpower." And so that made it fun, and I was okay with it. Okay.
So I had this kind of growing up because we used to play games like Phase 13. The game was called Phase 13, but it was just, again, there's 13 cards in a suit and a regular deck of playing cards. But instead of it being playing cards, they were just numbered cards with colored numbers on them, 1 through 13. It's not any different at all mechanically. Like, you can play the exact same game. If you're a family that enjoys sitting around playing games where you get suits and interact with people and there's a little extra thing added to the game that makes it fun and interactive, of the level of fun, if 100% is all of your fun or the pie chart, what piece of that pie chart was just the intellectual property?
Oh, okay. So of all the fun I had, how much was generated because it was the little characters?
Because Disney put all their IPs in there.
And what sucks is that it's non-zero. Like,
yeah.
It probably 5, 10, 15% of the fun was because I got to call out named characters and be ridiculous about it.
How would you quantify that? Like, is the experience, the good experiences that you've had playing Star Wars games and watching Star Wars movies somehow transposed onto this game with your kids?
I mean, it has to, right? Because, again, like you're talking about, you can replace all of these intellectual property, trademarked characters with anything.
Colored numbers, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I got, the purple power.
I got the blue 8.
That's not as whimsical. I think that's what it is. this introduces an aspect of whimsy to it because I'm using the combined might of Yoda and SpongeBob SquarePants to defeat you.
You're right. That is whimsical. Is that superior to if it were homogenous?
Like they all came from the same IP. Like we're playing with only the Star Wars characters. Maybe. I think it does. I think the juxtaposition of the ridiculousness does increase the whimsy a bit.
Okay, good. That's a perfect transition. Are you done talking about that game?
Yeah,
you recommend it?
Would I recommend it? I think you get them on sale for like $6. If you see it, you've got kids. I've played it twice in a calendar year. So, I mean, it's not something we're busting out every Friday night like, ooh, let's play something wild. But it's in the closet, and it's there. We play it. So, sure, why not?
So, that makes a great transition to this. So, the professor of Tolarian Community College just released a video. Did you get a chance to watch it or listen to it?
I did listen to it, yes.
Okay, so he used a new term that I think will become a mainstay. It just felt like the kind of term that's going to become a mainstay in Magic. The corporatization of Magic the Gathering over recent years has really ramped up in creating new products, introducing new intellectual properties, trying to find new ways to play, to basically say, this is the world's best-selling game, how do we sell more of it to more people? And one of the ways they've done that is through what they call Universes Beyond, where they take the game of Magic the Gathering and layer on top of it intellectual properties you already know. The best-selling, as heard on this podcast, the best-selling set of Magic the Gathering ever was the Lord of the Rings set. Which
isn't fair because it was best-selling because they put a Willy Wonka golden ticket in this stupid thing.
Okay, you said that already. But it was a good set, and it's fun, and I still play with the cards from it, and I like it.
All right, hang on, stop. I'm going to stop you right there because I'm going to say this. Yes, it was a fun set to play with, but it didn't matter. Lord of the Rings didn't matter at all. You could stick all the same cards, rename them, put different art on them, and call them in-universe Magic the Gathering IP, and it would have been just as fun. I don't think Lord of the Rings added to that.
Josh, I don't want to use your own words against you, but you said the opposite of that literally 1 minute ago.
I know, and I knew you were going to call me out for my hypocrisy because Something Wild, this stupid $6 Disney game, I don't give a crap about. I give a lot of craps about Magic the Gathering, and it's turning into this mishmash of nonsense.
I'd say the same thing applies. I say the fun that I have playing with the cards from the Universes Beyond, Lord of the Rings, of the pie of fun I'm having, a certain percentage, maybe even double digits, comes from the fact that I'm playing with characters and things that I know from the Lord of the Rings.
Okay, it does the opposite effect on me because it's removing it. I'm a story guy, Ben. I'm all in on these stories, and you play a card from outside of the universe, and all it does, it's like you can't sit down and watch a good movie without seeing the code in the Matrix. All I see is, oh, that was the best-selling set of Magic's history, and it was a Hasbro cash grab that set up. And all I think about is all the corporate nonsense that happened to make this non-Magic card a card.
You don't look at the beautiful art from one of those cards from that set that are not just reproductions of stills from the movies, but they're unique interpretations of the Lord of the Rings universe. You don't look at that and look at the flavor text and the art and the name and the effect, and that doesn't add to your experience?
No, because it's the opportunity cost.
You didn't play that set.
I played that set. I did play that set. I did. It was released straight into Modern, but I played a lot of Limited in that set. And I listen, Ben, I played that set, but I was sad that level of effort didn't go into a Magic story the way that War of the Spark. How many times have I yelled at you in this podcast to go listen to the full story of the War of the Spark arc?
So that's what the professor was talking about in this video. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're interested in it. I think it would be interesting to a non-Magic player, maybe.
That's actually not what he was talking about. In the he mentions
I'm not done yet. I'm
sorry.
laying the groundwork.
All right, go ahead.
So Universes Beyond is there. He doesn't love it. He's like Josh. He wishes that we would just focus on developing the story and the interaction of the characters in Magic's unique, self-created universe. However, there's kind of this spillover effect where they're putting less effort into telling stories in the Magic universe. So this year, they're coming out with 6 sets. Of those 6 sets, 3 of them are in Magic's own intellectual property universe, and 3 of them are Universes Beyond. There's a Final Fantasy set, there's a Spider-Man set, and there's a Avatar: The Last Airbender set. I'm not going to lie, Josh, I'm excited about at least 2 of the 3 of those. Like, whatever, this is working on me.
All right,
so sorry if I'm part of the problem.
I like Spider-Man, but I am mad about Spider-Man Magic the Gathering, okay? I like Final Fantasy. I am mad about Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm not going to lie, I'm probably going to like Avatar: The Last Airbender as Magic cards.
Good. Oh, thank goodness. You're not a heartless, soulless Grinch. Okay, so putting all of that aside, what's happening to these other 3 Magic sets is, well, not all of them, but what the professor called a hat set.
Because that's what happened in like every set that came out last year.
Yes. Okay. Well, not every one. There was one good one. But so for Murders of Karlov Manor, it was technically set in Ravnica, but it was just a murder mystery themed set with characters you already know.
It was Clue. It was Clue. We had assassins, characters that are canonically in Magic's canon that are assassins that are now somehow detectives in this set.
Characters you already know, but now they're wearing detective hats. Okay. And then a while, Thunder Junction comes out, and now it's all set in the Old West. Why? No reason. There's no reason anything should be set in the Old West in the Magic universe. But now you've got all the characters that you know and love. Now they're wearing cowboy hats. Why are they interacting? Why is there a train? Why are they here? It doesn't make any sense story-wise. It's a hat set.
What? Why is Rakdos in a gang with Oko? This makes no sense.
Right. I have no idea what you said, but yeah. And now, the latest set that came out is called Ether Drift, and it's kind of like Speed Runner. It's like this anime set where everybody's racing. And again, it's just a hat set. It's all the characters you know and love, but they're wearing NASCAR uniforms and racing around in vehicles and motorcycles and stuff. Why are they there? Why are they racing? Why are there vehicles, motorcycles, and cars now? I don't know.
All right, Ben.
What are we even doing?
Yeah, and so I played Ether Drift, and the mechanics are fun, and it's interesting, but I have to say this. I've told this to you offline. I'm going to say it for the record. I'm going to put it out into the world. There is one of the planeswalkers in the set. It might be the only planeswalker in the set is Chandra. I'm a huge fan of Chandra. Our first episode is about how I am so attracted to Chandra I couldn't walk away from
right.
the playmat with a
You're
heart on
going back to our roots here. Almost 5.5 years ago.
So the art on the one Chandra planeswalker card in this set is a tribute to Akira, the Akira motorcycle slide.
It looks like the VHS video cover of the original Akira motorcycle anime.
Yeah, it's sideways. She's on the motorcycle and it's clearly sliding to a stop. And Ben, they did my girl dirty because Chandra is hot. Okay, I don't care.
Not in this card. She's not.
Not in this card. No, this card she looks like a teenage boy. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. Who checked off Wizards of the Coast? Wizards. Listen. I know you have a style guide. I know you have a packet that you send to artists that say, oh, this is what a sliver looks like. This is what angels are. Angels, canonically, every angel you've ever seen in a Magic card is female. Did you know that? Every demon that you have ever seen in Magic is male.
I never even thought of that.
They are. So this is one of the things that's in the style guide. Wizards, the style guide for Chandra, I don't care. Every other art that you put out, she's a C cup. Period. Dot. End of discussion. Like, I want my Chandras to be... Oh, God, I'm sounding like a chauvinist jerk. I'm going to stop right here.
All right. So this is happening now. I don't know what the future is. I'm excited to play the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. The next set that's coming out called Tarkir Dragonstorm looks like maybe it got a legitimate take at building the universe in this story.
Okay,
maybe.
here. All right, so
it's
Magic,
not a hat set.
Magic is... I'm going to be on my soapbox just for a little bit, I promise. The reason Magic is the best-selling card game of all time is because the people that were making it really, really cared about it. We went from big story arc to big story arc. There were things that were happening, multi-sets. Over the course of years, they would unfold this story, and it would tell it through the art and through the cards and through the flavor text. I swear, one of these days, I'm going to tie you to a chair, and I'm going to tape your eyes open. I'm going to force you... like
Clockwork Orange Magic the Gathering
Clockwork Orange
edition.
style, yes. Because in War of the Spark, there was a series of cards that told the major story points, like through the flavor text and the art. Like, they were story cards. Like, they spent so much effort into building the lore of the universe that they were building. And then Hasbro took over. Lord of the Rings sold the most cards ever. And now 50% of Magic has not even an attempt at a cool story. It's just,
I think you're overstating it. The people that did all of that stuff you're talking about from long ago are still there.
And
yes, they have evil corporate overlords.
Yes,
but they're still doing that stuff. It's still in there.
But how? 50% of Magic isn't Magic anymore, and the last year's worth of sets have zero story.
All right, audience, you'll have to decide. Weigh in on the debate on our subreddit. There's one other game I want to talk about, Josh. So this is more of me being new guy in the church. Occasionally they tend to have like themed activities on non-church days to try to get people to socialize outside of church. And I got an email this week. I got an email last week that said, hey, we're having a game night at the church. Bring a snack. Come sit in and we'll play some games together. And I thought I'll give it a chance. So we'd had a work party that day. There was leftover cookies. I threw them in a box. This wasn't high effort. I didn't like really prepare. I showed up 10 minutes late. People were already playing, and I saw a big stack of like the good games, like the ones you see in the game store that you wish you had enough money to try them all.
Okay.
So they're over there playing their game, and they went for a really low barrier to entry game because they had some casuals that didn't want to get into it. And I'm looking at them and looking at the pile of games, and I'm like, do I want to go over there and try to weasel in on the low barrier to entry game, or do I want to go for it? So I look at the pile of games, and I pick the biggest box on the table.
Ooh, Access to Allies, or Access and Allies.
It was called A Feast for Odin.
Ooh, good name. Okay.
Yes. And it had like the little, German Game of the Year logos on the box.
Oh, that's how you know it's good.
It had the name of the game designer like right below the name, so you knew it was like, this is by the same guy that designed Carcassonne. So like big name. So I get it out, open it up, and it's glorious inside. Just infinity pieces and board games and discs and stuff. And I get it out and start reading the manual. It has a separate flavor manual.
Oh, those are the best games. You know it was lovingly crafted by somebody that cared when they leave a novel in there with you.
Yeah, so it's got a flavor manual, and it's all in the name. A Feast for Odin. You're Viking. You're the lord of a Viking tribe, and you're vying for supremacy amongst the other Viking tribes in the time. So you're doing everything you just imagined that a Viking does. They didn't leave anything out in this game. You're fishing, you're hunting, you're attacking other tribes, you're taking over islands, you're building longhouses, you're doing all of that. It's really complicated. He's like, fantastic. So they kind of get done with their first round of their casual game, and the guy who brought all the games comes over and he's like, this game takes about 3 hours to play, but it also happens to be my favorite. So if you're willing to make that kind of commitment, I am.
This is listeners, this is the problem with the good board games, like the top shelf board games. It's like this. I made the joke of Axis and Allies earlier. Like, oh, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to set up this board game. This board game takes 18 hours to complete.
We're going to reenact World War II with no shortcuts.
And no shortcuts at all. And just like the guy said, like, this is a great game and I love it, but this is a commitment. And this is the thing. Ben, he didn't come up to you. He wasn't saying, like, I don't know if we have time for this. He was looking at you and like, are you in? Like, if you're in, you're in, because I'm not quitting halfway.
So what do you think I did?
Oh, man, you committed. You were there till 2 in the morning.
I looked over at the snack table. I'm like, yeah, we're good.
Odin must feast.
Everyone else left, and it was just me and this guy. This game is a 2 to 4 player game. I don't need to describe it a lot. I'll put a link to it on Board Game Geek if you want to check it out. We finished in about an hour and a half because I was like, I want to learn by playing. I'll play fast, keep the turns quick. I don't need to understand everything.
And you got decimated.
It was close. It was a point accumulation game where kind of like where you can kind of pick your strategy, and the way you interact is by potentially crowding out. In a turn, you can only do certain actions once, and if you do it before the other person, then they can't do it.
Okay.
Like, for instance, there was an animal husbandry mini game, and he wasn't doing it. And so I went for it, and I started breeding cows and horses and pigs.
Oh, man, I love that. All right, so Parks and Rec. You ever watch Parks and Rec? I'd probably ask you that a million times. The Cones of Dunshire. They made up a stupid board game just to make fun of people like us that like super complicated board games as a throwaway joke. But boy, howdy, if we don't love us a good Cones of Dunshire game.
Yeah, and that's what it was. the unique aspect of this game that attracts me to it is all the pieces that you're accumulating that represent gathering treasure, hunting for food, farming vegetables, have a shape and size. And on all the boards that you accumulate of where your home colony is and any islands that you conquer, all have like a blob on them that you have to cover with these pieces. And then you're playing Tetris. Ooh, and how effectively you cover the pieces ultimately determines your score at the end of the game.
My favorite board game of all time, Scythe, has a setup like that where you have this board and like you do the top actions and you get the bottom benefits. And as you invest in the game, you move pieces from the top of the board to the bottom of the board, and it covers and uncovers systematically like the cost and then uncovers benefits. Like you're physically moving pieces that change how the game plays. This is just
like that, where you don't have to remember everything because the board tells you by the way the pieces interact.
Such good design.
Anyway, it was great. It was a great time. I had a good time. If he ever said, "Hey, do you want to get together and play another game of Feast for Odin?" I'd totally be up for it. So,
did I ever tell you about my restaurant idea that I've had since I was a small child? You brought it up because of the Feast of Odin. Ben, I want to have a super high-end, expensive, like experience type place. Like I want you to drive up to this place and it's a Viking longhouse, and you go in and you get your choice of like an axe or a helmet or like a cloak, like the fur, as you go to sit down.
I thought you were going to say go in and play board games. This is way better.
Oh, no. This is a Viking longhouse, right? And then you sit down, and then you don't order. There's no ordering. The first like hour you're there is just kind of cajoling and talking, getting to know everybody.
Sure. Like medieval times.
Yeah, like medieval times.
Everybody gets the same thing.
But then, like an hour in, everybody gets up and you go get onto a longboat that rows across like a small lake where there is a medieval peasant English village that is in mid-pillage. And you just jump in like... and... Ben,
Josh, that took a hard left turn.
Well, no, if you want chicken, go get a chicken. If you want like a salad, then go raid the root cellar. If you want steak, you and your 3 closest friends need to haul this cow onto the boat. And like whatever you loot and pillage, you haul it back. Like I don't know, you get like a half an hour to go just like absolutely terrorize some fake village, and then you go back and you eat.
Josh, your restaurant idea suddenly became Westworld.
Kind of. I get it. It's a liability nightmare, and there's all kinds of problems with it, but how awesome would that
be? No, stop lighting the thatch roofs on fire.
No. The thatch roofs are already on fire.
Okay.
It's all pyrotechnics and like Disney animatronics or whatever.
Oh my gosh. I told you I did this when here in Pleasant Grove, Utah was the location of that themed fantasy village park that you could go to. And anyway, it gets really complicated when you try to have people have themed experiences. If they take it just a little bit too far, or if the characters aren't able to adjust to the creativity of the casuals.
Yeah. I feel like
you had me at themed dinner of Viking Longhouse and lost me at pillaging a village.
I just want to I think I just want to pillage a medieval English town.
You were born 600 years too late, Josh.
Oh, I was.
I'm like 40% Viking by genealogy. Like if I did one of those 23andMe tests or something, I'm like literally most of my family are Danish immigrants.
I feel like you'd be the guy making their shoes back at the village.
That guy's important. All right, Josh, for our main segment today, you sent me a message about an idea to talk about the decision-making process that's happening inside of our heads. But I don't fully feel like I've conceptualized everything you were getting at, so I'm going to let you run this part of the discussion.
Yeah, so it just popped into my head because we've talked around this kind of thing multiple times in the podcast. It's like how we approach, we as adults in our personal lives approach big decisions. Because there's no class for that. Like you go to school and you learn math and you learn history, but nobody tells you like what's the process by which you go about deciding what your next car is going to be. Like this is an enormous financial investment that's going to impact your life for multiple years. How do you approach that decision? And everybody does it a little different. Everybody has their own strategies. Everybody has their own unique takes on these things.
Which is probably why we as a society haven't zeroed in on a single automobile and single automaker.
Well, it permeates. This is probably why we haven't talked about it specifically, because it permeates every aspect of every part of our lives to a point where it's automatic. It's just built into the things that you do.
It's so ubiquitous that it's invisible.
I was at work today. 12:30 came around. My stomach grumbled, and I looked up into the sky and I said, "I need to eat some food. What food should I eat?" And Ben, the world is my oyster. How do I make that decision? Like, what process do you use to narrow down your choices and then, go eat something?
Yeah, and people different than you and me apparently think about that well in advance, so that when 12:30 rolls around, they're just executing the plan they made long ago instead of coming up with a new plan on the spot.
Oh, little do you know, Ben. I've planned out every meal that I'm going to eat from now until the end of my life.
So then why did you portray it as spontaneity?
When I said spontaneity, it's like, oh, the world is my oyster. I can eat anything. So which of the three
omnivore's
restaurants
dilemma,
that I frequent am I going to eat at today? And which the restaurant is synonymous with the meal choice, because I only get one thing. It doesn't matter where I go.
All right. So you often call this a weighted average. Basically, we're a decision machine, and inputs and go out, and factors exist, and out spits a decision that is what we do.
These are all right. So first of all, right there, you're already skipping one of the aspects of decision making.
Go ahead.
Is you have conscious and unconscious decision making, right? So the unconscious is what you're talking about, the weighted average. Like, you've already thought about something like this, or it's close enough that it never breaks the conscious threshold. Somebody asks you a question and you instantly know the answer. Ben, what's one of your top 3 foods? Dang it! You completely destroyed my example by hesitating.
You're right. I couldn't do it. Have you seen the thing where the man on the street walks up and puts a microphone in someone's face and goes, "Name a woman," and they can't do it?
Put somebody on the spot. We called that public math when I was going through pilot training. It's like, oh, what's 10,000 minus 8,000? Oh, it's 2,000. But for some reason, when you're at attention and somebody's yelling at you, it's really hard to remember that 10,000 minus 8,000 is 2,000.
Okay, tacos.
So specifically, I didn't ask you what's your favorite, because that's a hard decision. What's your favorite food? Oh, well, now I've got to think about all the foods I like and try to pick one. But what if it changes? What if I'm not feeling it today? This is why I specifically said top 3. Easy to get a top 5, top 10. Hard to get a favorite.
Yeah.
But anyway, the idea is that there are some decisions that are subconscious. They never break the threshold. Things happen and it feels like you just act because you made the decision below the threshold where you had to think about it. Yeah, how did you make this decision? I personally think it's a weighted average thing. Like the same set of inputs runs through 1,000 different filters in my brain, and each one of those filters puts a little weight on one side of the scale or the other. And then at the end of this whole process, we just figure out, okay, every experience that we've ever had in all of life says this is the decision, and we don't know how we got here.
So on Saturdays during tax season, are you allowed to eat out in your... Is that how it works? On Saturdays and tax season, you treat yourself to eating out. What did you pick?
Chipotle.
Okay.
And I got the exact same thing that I always get at Chipotle every time, except they were out of brown rice at the time and I wasn't willing to wait. And they were out of steak at the time and I wasn't willing to wait. So I got a burrito with white rice instead of brown and chicken instead of steak, and it was noticeably inferior.
Reinforce your belief that you've already settled on the ideal meal for yourself at that location.
Okay. That's one of the. We'll talk about meal decisions later. That's one of the key ones, because it's the decision that you have to make 3 times a day, every day, your entire effing life. Versus the conscious level decisions, which are big. Like, okay, this is not a problem that I run into enough that I've already built in the mechanics into my subconscious to take care of it. I have to build a decision-making process from scratch, execute it, and then hopefully be okay with what I come up with.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on board. So where do we start? You gave the hypothetical of buying a car.
Well, I keep throwing that one out there because that was the last, I feel like at least, that was the last big conscious decision that I had to make where, okay, the costs are known and the benefits are known, but so the real decision there, at the end of the day, if you boil it down, like, we need a new car. Okay, there's some must-haves that everybody can name off the top of their head in like less than 5 seconds for your specific situation, for the kind of car that you need.
Sure.
We needed a gas-powered car that could seat at least 4 people, that had a decent amount of storage because we have kids, and who knows if we're going to be hauling stuff around for sports or for vacations or whatever. That was it. Those are the requirements. I need a gas-powered car that holds 4 people with some storage space. But I don't know if you've looked at the market lately. There's a whole lot that check those 3 boxes. And so it's then, how do
you narrow it down?
Okay, so we have 86,000 options. What do we do to narrow it down? And that's the decision-making process.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes when I'm making a complicated decision like that, like being in the military and we move every 4 years, and every time we move, we have to find a new place to live. That was my complicated one. And I don't feel like doing it 8 times meant I was really good at it by the 8th time, other than the fact that I always looked for, I valued things that allowed me to eliminate a whole bunch of options a lot more than things that gave me more choices.
So this is actually something that I wrote down. I tried to come up with some of the common decision-making scenarios when I was trying to compartmentalize how we're going to talk about this discussion, okay? So one of these, what I'm talking about, is the omnivore's dilemma. It's like, okay, the world is your oyster. You
can eat anything.
You can eat anything. You can go anywhere. You can drive any car. So what do you pick? And all I could think of in that situation is you just start eliminating the worst options.
Okay. Yeah, but if that's the only strategy you used, it wouldn't get you at a decision.
No, it just helps you narrow down from 86,000 choices to a couple of hundred, right?
So do you want to just try to rattle all the different? So you gave space, fuel type, cargo capacity. Those are a few. Do you have a brand preference? Do you have aesthetic preference? Do you have age preference? Do you care about reliability ratings or history? Do you care about long-term value? What's it called when a car holds its value? Retention.
Yeah, retention. Domestic versus foreign. Ongoing maintenance requirements. Spare tire. Does it come with one? The options. You want it fully loaded? You just need something with buckets for seats. Like there's. Sorry. So all right. Okay. So this is what we're talking about now is the things that feed into the decision-making process, right?
Okay.
So the different factors.
So you want to be more meta than that.
Well, yes. If we're abstracting from this one decision-making thing, we're talking about, okay, well, how do we break down what goes into making this decision? And so I think you wrote this down as the factors, and it makes perfect sense. Yes, there's all of the known things. There's the financial costs. Okay, so we know financial decisions are going to limit you on what is acceptable.
Right. I eliminated a whole bunch of options because I can't even afford those, so I'm not even going to consider them.
So, like,
even if I want a Ferrari, that's not in the options.
Even if McLaren checked my boxes, that is not something that is on the table to park on the street in the neighborhood that I live in.
Okay.
All right. So that's one factor is the resources that you're going to have to give up to get this thing. Because all right, other decisions aren't financial. The decisions are resource based. So we can abstract this a little bit. It's like, oh, what am I going to do with my Saturday? Okay, I have a resource. It is time. How much time am I going to dedicate to any one thing based on all the other factors? There are the impact. What impact is this going to have? Like, what are the outcomes that I am desiring from this thing? So, like we're talking about, if we keep going back to the car analogy, I can get something with a 4-stroke motor that I pull start that gets me from point A to point B. Like, if we're being really serious about it, I could get a golf cart. That technically checks some of those boxes, but does it though? Like, it doesn't go very fast.
You got to drive on the freeway like 45 minutes one way. Exactly.
So there's what's the real impact? It's like, oh, well, I'm just going to be driving 10 times longer than I thought I was going to. A more realistic scenario, should I get just a traditional gas engine or do I get a hybrid? Like, the gas engine has less complexity and probably better maintenance. I don't even know. But the hybrid's going to get better gas mileage, and gas is really expensive. So long-term ramifications impact of this decision. There's a bunch of intangibles. Oh, well, these two, I've narrowed it down to this model. This one's got heated seats. This one does not. Like, I can assign a monetary value to the difference in those two things, a monetary cost. But what is the benefit? is the benefit that I'm getting from heated seats worth the financial cost that I am accepting for it at the front end?
Right? Like, this one does have heated seats, but I have to pay Elon Musk $100 a year in order to use them.
You deliberately brought up the most predatory, ridiculous thing that exists in auto manufacturing today. Like, heated seats.
I couldn't help it.
Heated
Sorry,
seats
listeners.
are not a service. Okay? If it is hard built into my car, you cannot lease it to
You're
me.
so predictable sometimes.
Yes, I am easily goaded by things that make me mad.
Okay, so I remember in the military kind of opening up my eyes to the way they approached decision making like this. Just like you're talking about, from a very zoomed out perspective, we're like, all right, let's not talk about what kind of car we want. Let's talk about what it is we need to do. Well, we need transportation. What kind of transportation? Well, sometimes we need to move things, and sometimes we need to move people. Like, all right, let's talk about what we need to move and why. And then once we know all of the things we need, then that will help us make the decision. The problem is it made really bad decisions. I mean it, like really terrible decisions. Because and I would scratch my head at it because on the surface it makes sense. Like, just define all the things you need and then tell someone that's what you need and have them make it for you, and then you'll be happy because you have all the things you need. But if I say, well, sometimes I might need to carry 20 people and sometimes I might need to haul 3 tons of stuff, then they build you a car that can carry 20 people and 3 tons of stuff, and most of the time it sucks.
So that's the key there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why government spending is atrocious, because you're going to sit down and be like, okay, we need a car. And then somebody's going, whoa, wait, how many people need to go in this car? And then they're going to spin off a subcommittee that's going to meet every day for 6 months to define what a people is. And not only that, but then there's nobody in the room that's going to point out somebody and say, shut up, that's a fringe case that's going to come up such a small percentage of the time that nobody gives a crap. So sit down.
If we need to do that, we'll get 3 of them.
Okay.
Carpool.
All right. I'm going to say, while we're on this topic, I'm going to say a very unpopular opinion, okay? In America, pickup trucks are rampant. Like, you can't, you throw a rock and you'll hit a pickup truck.
Trust me, no one knows this more than me.
Ben, the average pickup truck is like the bed. You actually need a pickup truck less than 1% of the time that you own it.
Yeah. And they've gotten smaller over the years. But the thing that makes me realize how ubiquitous pickup trucks are is how conspicuously missing they were for the 5 years I was in Europe. I hardly ever saw them, ever.
Did you miss it? Did you miss not having a pickup truck every 6 feet? That's the thing. We, as Americans, are enamored with pickup trucks because, like, oh, look at the utility that I get from having this bed that you never use.
Well, Josh, your monster truck, you utilize that thing to its full extent like every single day.
Ben, there is a difference between a tradesperson and, like, some soccer mom that's just got to get from A to B.
Okay. So you got these factors that are going into the decision-making process. You can't just give them equal weight. You need a system.
Exactly.
So that you're putting these inputs in and then your system is spitting out something reliably.
Okay. I am done talking this high-level, zoomed-out meta nonsense. Ben, Let's get brass tacks here. Let's talk about the way you and I approach decisions, because I guarantee that they are going to be different.
Totally.
Okay. One of mine forever, like, this is my favorite way to make any kind of decisions, is cost versus benefit. It's like, here, it's a very utilitarian outlook. I try to be utilitarian in my whole life. Here is the cost I'm going to incur, whether that be tangible or intangible, physical or emotional cost. And here is the benefit, whether that is physical, tangible, emotional, whatever. This is the benefit that I get from it. And I'm going to make the decision in that moment. Am I willing to pay this cost for this benefit?
I agree. That's one of my favorite ways. Like, I can justify that I'm going to spend $4,000 on this gaming PC because I'm going to spend $10,000 on 10,000 hours on it over the next 5 years. And you know how much that is per hour? It's like 3 cents.
I'm going to spend $75 on a keyboard. Nicole, I did not buy a new keyboard. I didn't, I promise. But I spent $75 on a keyboard that my wife will say to me, like, why are you buying $75 on a keyboard? Because it is a pleasure every time my fingers stroke those keys. And I am on it all day, every day.
I'm looking down at this keyboard that you gave me, and it has this cool little feature where I can change the LED pattern on the lights. Ooh, that's a rainbow. Nice.
That's a tiny little intangible benefit of having a slightly nicer keyboard.
Yeah, and how do you factor that in if you're going to spend $25 versus $75 on a keyboard? Is that extra utility worth $50 of the clicky travel of the keys, of the reliability of the mechanism, of the happiness you get from typing on it?
So I have spent I've spent a larger than average amount of money on my setup at work. Work provided me with everything that I needed to do my job, and I invested personally several $100s into making it better. I have an ergonomic chair. I have an ultra-wide monitor that I own. I got a new monitor stand, brand new keyboard and mouse. Like, I replaced everything in there that I touch constantly throughout the day because I'm there 40 hours a week. Most of my waking existence is using these peripherals, and so it's worth it to me to make that experience as good as it can be.
Okay. Yeah, that very much sounds steeped in like utility analysis of, cost benefit. What are the things that are weighing on the other side of the scale when you want something like that?
It's always like something like this, like, oh, I want this new peripheral. I want this new thing. Like, all right, so the latest thing. This is the decision that I'm struggling with now that is going to happen sometime in the next 6 months. My son's computer, which was a hand-me-down POS, but he's playing like real games, and like he went and got Helldivers 2, which is a legit brand new game, and it struggled so badly that I went out and I invested some money and I got him a better video card than I own for my computer, so now he can actually play the thing. Well, he's still playing all these games off of a 10-year-old 1 terabyte spinning disk hard drive. And his load times are so bad, he doesn't even know how bad they are. And so the next thing that I'm going to get for him is going to be an M.2, a solid state memory drive that's hopefully will have larger capacity than he has. I can just carbon copy everything over, and it'll be like the exact same computer, just 3 times as fast, if not faster.
Okay.
But there is, like, his quality of life is going to improve. I'm going to enjoy the experience of upgrading it with him and explaining to him all these things and just having that moment. And, like, I just love the hour and a half that I'm going to spend tearing open his computer and doing all these computery things. But the cost that's $150 that is gone. That's the known cost. The unknown cost is all of the opportunity cost. Like $150 buys a lot of stuff. And so I'm not going to say it's going to stop me from doing this because obviously I'm going to do it. It just, for some reason, my brain needs a lot of time to climb over that mountain and decide, yep, okay, now all of a sudden, nothing about this equation has changed, but I've thought about it too much and I'm sick of it, so I'm just going to make it happen.
So a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were at a turning point on one of these decisions because some expensive home electronics is a good example of things that you buy somewhat frequently, but not terribly frequently. And televisions are another example. So we moved to this big new house and we needed a television for the basement. And it had plumbed in wiring for like good surround sound system, and the room was situated just right.
Okay.
So we were like, all right, let's get a good TV and a good surround sound system. I started doing some research, reading some review sites and stuff, and I narrowed in not on a single thing, but like 3 different paths we could go. We could go like good enough entry level, we could go mid level, or we could go high level. And do we want a mini LED with zoning shading, or do we want OLED, or and what kind of surround sound do we want? All that kind of stuff. And my wife cares enough that we're spending this money about it that she'll engage a little bit and do some of the reading and stuff and have an opinion. And we just reach a point where we were at an impasse. I didn't feel like I even knew what the clear answer was. I wasn't saying this is what we should do. I was still like, I don't know. We could get that one or we could get that one. I don't know if we'll be happy with it or not. I think we'll be happy either way. Would we be more happy? So you were talking about this in what you sent me. This is like an unknown benefit.
Yes.
Like I don't know how much benefit that additional $500 is going to buy me.
And it's unknowable. Like, you're going to spend $500 on a thing. You don't get both things, so you can't side-by-side compare. You don't get to see the alternate timeline where you bought the other thing.
Yeah.
You just have to be happy.
I didn't know. And this is the part you're going to like. So we're at a point in this decision where my wife's just like, I don't know. Can God break the tie? Like, what do you think he's going to say if we ask him which TV we should buy?
Flip a coin. Like, go up and, like, next time you're invited to speak at church, ask somebody. It's like, oh, and by the way, if somebody in here has an OLED and somebody in here has a micro LED, I want to bring a Blu-ray to your house. I want to watch the same 10 minutes of the same movie on both TVs.
So you said that kind of facetiously, flipping a coin, but do you know that there's actual biblical evidence supporting using random chance to make important decisions? They called it casting lots. It's in the Bible for making like really important decisions. They would cast lots to basically determine God's will through random chance.
I'm going to do you one better. So in computer science, we care very, very much about actual random algorithms and whether or not they are truly random, because fun fact, it's very difficult for a deterministic machine to generate a truly random number. Most of them are just based on time. But there is a website, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but it generates and it spits out truly random numbers because it is based on lightning strikes that are happening on the Earth at any given time.
Wow. Yeah, I just don't care about that because I think clock cycles actually are truly random.
But they're not, because they keep happening.
All right, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So, but you and I have touched on a lot of these things. So you've got known cost and unknown cost. Like, I don't know how, if I buy one or the other, like which one's going to break first and I'm going to need to replace it. I don't know if I spend the $500 on the OLED instead of the mini LED, if I'm going to be $500 worth of happier. I don't know that stuff, but we have our preferences. We have our requirements. It's like, this is how big we want it to be. This is how, the form factor that we want. These are the brands we trust. And we narrowed in on 6 options. And then we didn't know what to do. Then we were at a complete impasse.
So then you have to have, so this is the meta-analysis again, right? So your decision-making process got you close, but it couldn't quite get over the finish line. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you got to have your rules of thumb, right? Something like this, okay, how often are you going to replace this TV? If the answer is less than 5 years, then I'm going to tell you, like, go the best that you can afford reasonably. Like, don't break the bank, don't, like, bust your budget, but the best one that you can get, because this is a long-term investment now. It's like a mattress. This is like a car. If you're going to use it for 5 years or more, then you want it to be as good as you can possibly get it.
Do you think using random chance in a situation like this, where you have a number of viable options that are otherwise, you don't, there's some things you know and some things you don't, but all of these would be good choices. Do you think using random chance is a legitimate way of breaking the tie? Just be like, all right,
I think so.
That's it. We got 6 options. We'll roll a D6 and that's what we'll do.
I mean, that's completely legitimate because, like I said earlier, you're not going to see the alternate timelines. You're not going to know how green the grass is on the other ones. As long as it makes you happy, then you're good. I'll tell you how I usually break these ties, though. If I get to a point where I know I've got 6 choices and they're all in my mind equally good and I don't know how to break this tie, then I let it simmer. And I search websites every couple of days and I will buy the first one that I get the best deal on. Oh, this one's on sale for 20% off. I'm going to snap it up.
That's an interesting way to break the tie. I wish we thought of that. We both did the same thing where we went to make the decision. We got right up to where we had 4 or 5 options and we couldn't break the tie and we stopped thinking about it for a while. We're just like, whatever, we still don't have a TV in the basement. Then we came back to it again. And then we were kind of like, we're still down to like these 2 or 3 options. And somehow magically just waiting had made 1 or 2 options disappear. I don't even know how that happened. We couldn't have forced it the first time.
Your subconscious chewed on it and decided and spit out the other ones because you had a preference that was so minute your conscious mind couldn't differentiate between them, but your subconscious could.
I guess so. And then finally, the day we made the decision, we just kind of sat down and we looked them both up and we were like, I don't know, what'd she want to do? And it might as well have been a coin flip, even though it wasn't. I can't tell you why we made the decision. I'm not super happy with the decision we made. There's a few drawbacks I wish I'd read and researched more. Specifically, the surround sound system has a subwoofer that connect the soundbar that wasn't integrating with the TV with a cable connection. So I have to connect it via Bluetooth, and then it integrates better.
Okay.
But it doesn't connect automatically when I turn the TV on. So it requires me to go push a button on the sound bar in order for it to connect every time I turn the TV on.
That's the worst. You can't get there's got to be an adapter for this. Are you running your surround sound through the TV? Because that's your biggest problem.
If I'd gotten, this is the part I hate, if I'd gotten the same brand of soundbar as the brand of TV, the integration was guaranteed. But because I shopped them separately and picked them based on reviews, I didn't do that. And I normally value that higher, and that changed the averages in my head. Next time I'm making this decision, I'm going to value brand integration higher.
So do you have a receiver? Or you just run everything to the TV? Okay, so...
The amplifiers in the subwoofer and the soundbar.
Okay, so... Well, there's your problem right there. You didn't pay a premium for a middleman device that connects everything.
Yeah.
I have the same receiver that I bought in 2009, Ben. And it does not have all of the fancy features you expect it to. And I am one HDMI input short of it being perfect. But it's still kicking. Here we are freaking 15 years later.
Not a lot's changed, in the standard for decoding Dolby 5.1 sound and the way amplifiers work for just taking a sound signal and making it loud enough for the human ear to hear in a room.
Well, in your defense, I bought that receiver back before I had kids, and I was just... where every month we would cash our paychecks and just swim in it because we just had so much money.
Okay. So let's take this off in a completely different direction.
Okay.
So one of my favorite movies for thinking about this kind of thing was a movie that came out in the year 2000 called The Family Man. I've talked about it on the podcast before. It's with Nicolas Cage. He's starts out as a high-powered stockbroker, sleeping around, driving a Ferrari, wearing $10,000 Gucci suits. And then a guardian angel played by Don Cheadle comes around, whisks him off to the suburbs, working at a tire installation auto maintenance place with a wife and 2 kids. And he just gets what they call a glimpse. He gets to see the alternate timeline where if he'd made the different decision.
Oof, that's never good. That's never good because what you're wondering is always going to be better than the actual reality of it.
One thing I love about the movie is how visceral the trade-offs are. These aren't small trade-offs between getting married and having 2 kids and settling for a low job versus prioritizing your career and advancement over everything and going for the best options and getting the most possible income. Those are radically different outcomes.
Yeah. And whenever I play The Sims, I always maximize my career before I even start flirting with the neighbors.
You rattled that off so easily, but I loved it. I want that on a cross stitch.
Any Zoomers listening to my voice, maximize your career, then flirt with your neighbors.
Oh man. So anyway, early on in our marriage, my wife and I got married after a very short courtship, and I was anxious to start a family. I'm going to take the blame for this completely.
Courtship? Pretty sure you stalked her.
Let's not go off on a tangent here. I'm giving this adequate address. And then we had our first child within a year of us being married, and within 10 years of us being married, we had our 6th child. There were times where we were growing up together and suffering through the challenges that come along with how much responsibility we took on so early in our marriage. Then my wife would sometimes say, I wonder what it would be like if we waited a few years to have kids.
I wonder what it would be like if we weren't part of an institution that thrust incredible responsibility on very young people.
If you want to learn about the consequences of that, read the book that I talked about and what I'm reading. We've made it work. And Josh, it's hard to not look at these kinds of decisions where I took one TV versus I took another TV, as opposed to would my son exist or not, who became a human being that I love and value and cherish and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to have these hypothetical discussions when you're talking about now we've brought other human beings into the equation. But let's just say you could completely do that. All right, let's say we delayed having kids 5-10 years. We traveled the world together. We had 2 jobs. We saved up money. We had better cars. We had more principal in our house so that the first time we bought a house, we could get a nicer house and all the things on that alternate timeline.
Yeah.
But you can't, like you said, in these factors, there's intangibles, there's financial factors, there's benefits, there's impact, and you can't know all that at the outset.
So what do? You sit at home and you just huddle in a blanket and you rock yourself, paralyzed with all of the options that you have.
Yeah, I mean, That's an option, and I've met people that do that. I sometimes I like to remind people that I love that not deciding is deciding.
Okay, I want to talk about food for a second, because again, this is, you have to make this decision 3 times a day, every day for your whole life. Mm-hmm. And so easily the decision you have to make the most is, what am I going to eat right now? And there was this College Humor skit on YouTube. I probably sent it to you, where Brendan Lee Mulligan goes off on this rant. He's like, oh, hey, let's order some Chinese food. Place closes in 5 minutes. What do we want to order? And somebody goes, oh, can we see a menu? And he goes, it's Chinese food. You don't need a menu. He's like, well, I got to look at a menu. And he goes on the world's greatest rant of, we are all at an age in our life where we should know what we like from different genres of restaurant right now. And it's one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time, link in the show notes. And I so resonate with what he said in this thing, where I can go, it doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter what restaurant I walk into. I know the genre, and I know every genre of food, what I like in that genre.
Okay.
So if I'm walking into a Mexican food restaurant, I'm getting enchiladas. If I'm walking into an American restaurant, I'm getting a cheeseburger with pickles and mustard. If I'm walking into a Thai restaurant, I'm walking right back out again, because I don't eat Thai food.
All right, Josh, you probably noticed in the show notes that I included a graphic. I'll put this on our Facebook page. Sorry, Gen Alpha, who doesn't go to Facebook, of the psychological big 5 personality traits. This is the thing I think that we haven't talked about yet that's important to know. Because, yes, there's all these factors and beliefs and time of life and your psychology and stuff. And I get that whoever made this sketch really appealed to your personality, Josh. That, like, you're at a point in your life where you should know what are at these restaurants and already have your mind made up about that. Here are the 5. Agreeableness, openness to experience, neuroticism, conscientiousness, and extroversion. There's a very specific combination of those 5 traits where you feel the way that guy does. Like, I have already made up my mind what I want when I'm eating at a Mexican food restaurant. But imagine somebody with a different version of that star, Josh, where they're more open to new experience, they're more agreeable, they're less neurotic, they're less conscientious, they're maybe more of an extrovert, and they're like, I want to try something new. Maybe this place has a special that I've never tried before. Maybe I'm feeling different today, and whatever's on the menu will tickle my fancy.
I understand that those people exist, but I don't understand them. Because
there's a reason you don't understand them. It's just different psychology.
No, because all through college, I would go to these restaurants and I would be open to new experiences. I was open to new experiences for a long time, and I would try new things. Like, all right, I've had that and it was really good, so let me try something else. Oh, that wasn't as good as the thing I had last time. And so now, maybe this is either bad or maybe this is good. But I am paralyzed by opportunity cost.
Okay, there's a scene I love from one of the Star Trek movies. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 or something. It's when Data gets the emotion chip. And he goes to, what's the bar on the Enterprise in the Next Generation called?
10 forward.
Yeah, so he goes to 10 forward, and he sits down. He's got the emotion chip. He doesn't need to eat. He's an android. And Whoopi Goldberg's character gives him a cocktail, and he tries it and sips it. And he's like...
Yeah, he made a face. He made this really ridiculous face.
What is it? He's like, this is terrible. I hate this.
No, he's like, this is eliciting an emotional reaction somehow. It's like, well, what does it feel like? I don't know. And he sipped it again, and he made the weird face. And then Whoopi Goldberg says, well, it looks like he hates this. And he goes, yes, I hate this.
And then she goes, would you like another? And he says,
yes, please.
Yes, please. This is it, Josh. Not all of the decisions that people make are like, what's the thing on this menu I'm going to love the most? Sometimes they want to taste something bad.
No, that's not a thing. No.
Yes.
False. Nobody on this earth has ever walked into a restaurant and was like, I want to try something bad today.
I don't know. People eat oysters, Josh. I love the quote from Groundhog Day that I love. He's like, people eat blood sausage. People are idiots.
All right. So one of my New Year's resolutions, or my bingo card, is to actively date my wife. I want to carve time, deliberate time out of my schedule to take her out. And so we have found actually a little niche of time that's actually kind of working. And that's when my daughter's at dance class. And so we've been going out to eat while my daughter's at dance class. Nice. Just 2 of us. And so we went to the sushi restaurant this last week, and they had oysters on the menu. And I was like, oh, I could get the oysters. You know what those are supposed to do, right? And she goes, they might do that for you, but me watching you eat oysters is not going to do that for me.
Okay. Well, that all went into your decision-making machine, and you came out with a weighted average. What did you do?
I did not order what my wife called the boogers.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about another aspect of this. We haven't talked about that. And you kind of focus on, like, what am I getting for lunch when I'm at work? And, yeah, that's an individual decision. But when you're talking about what do I eat in the context of going out with your wife or making dinner from your family, now a whole bunch of new factors come in.
Okay, so my wife and I both work full-time, and we both do mentally engaging tasks. And so our decision-making muscle is tired when it comes time to decide what we're going to eat.
This is a fact. This is a factor.
This is a real thing. And so our normal routine is we make one of us will make like a meal at dinner for the weekend, and then the other will make a meal that will have leftovers generated for the rest of the week. And so we just have like 3 or 4 things lying around the house all the time forever. And
that's why you had a crock pot in your dishwasher.
So I had a crock pot in my dishwasher. Shut up, Ben. But I have found one of the best ways to overcome this decision paralysis, because at the same time, like you'll ask your spouse, what do you want to eat? And they'll say, I don't care. What they really mean is, I do care, but I don't want to exercise the decision-making muscle. Do not pick something that I don't want, and I'm not going to tell you what I don't want. So I have found a hack that gets me through those situations where it's like, well, I'll eat anything. Well, I'll eat anything. Well, then just decide. Well, you just decide. Well, I don't like this, and then I'm going to veto the one decision that you made. Like, get around all of that. When my wife says, I don't care, you pick, I give her 3 options. And I pick 3 restaurants that I am okay with eating with right now, and I say, okay, this one, or this one. And usually that either she'll pick one of those 3, or she'll say, I don't care again. And then she just wrote me a blank check to get my favorite food.
Okay, that's nice. I also have to throw in factors that I don't normally include in my decision. For instance, if we're going to go out to eat, my wife has way different preferences. I do, like, for instance, she has tiers of restaurants where she considers the cleanliness standards of the dining areas to be below what she's comfortable with.
Oh, so she'll eat the food, but she won't eat the food there.
That's right.
Okay.
I
agree.
And they're different than my standards. Like, she'll eat McDonald's chicken nuggets, but she won't eat them in a McDonald's.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. All right. I'll eat pizza off the floor, so I'm not with her on this, but I understand it.
Yeah, so bringing another person in changes the calculus of the equation. Now, there's another thing that's happening, and that is, yes, we're consuming food together, we're making a decision about food, but we're also interacting as humans, and there's that interaction that's happening as well, and it has its own factors. Where, like, am I making a deposit or withdraw from the relationship bank by doing this?
All right, flesh that out a bit. Like, all right, name 2 restaurants, one where it's a deposit and one where it's a withdrawal.
It's all a withdrawal for me, Josh.
Eating out, sitting down to eat with your wife is a withdrawal?
She is a homebody.
Okay.
Like, she'll eat a yogurt out of the fridge 10 times out of 10 if it means not putting on non-slippers.
Okay, I can give you 2. If we go to Barrow's Pizza, Ben, I love a slice of pizza all day. Streets of New York, like, there's a bunch of places I can sit down and order 2 slices of pizza and a drink and just be happy as a pig in poop. But my wife doesn't want to eat there. And so that's a withdrawal. At the same time, my wife will go to some of these fancy frou-frou Cafe Zupa, Wildflower Cafe, whole grain, corn-fed, like free-range nonsense that I cannot stand. And so that's going to be a deposit.
That's great. That's perfect. That on the 2 corners of that Punnett square. You don't like it. She does. If you go there, it's a deposit in the relationship bank. You like it. She doesn't. If you go there, it's a withdrawal from the relationship bank. Did I capture that right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. For me, it's more like going out as a withdrawal from the relationship bank.
So
staying in isn't.
So you need a new square. You need the square. It's like, oh, she really likes this food if I bring it to her in a styrofoam case already smoking.
Yes. Yeah. Like if I get Panda Express and bring it home, she's way happier than that than if I say, hey, do you want to stop sewing and go to Panda Express with me? She'd be like, no, I'm not doing that.
Man, if I roll into this house with a chicken chimichanga from Ocho's Locos or Tortas Chana, whatever our Mexican food restaurant is down the street, man, that's a huge deposit. It's like, oh, nice. I brought you a steaming hot chicken chimichanga.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I have a different set of factors in making that decision. Okay, there's one I want to talk about that you haven't really brought up yet, and there's a reason you haven't brought it up yet, because it's not one of your decision-making processes. So when you are a person of faith, there's a belief that you can tap into the divine when making a decision.
You can actually tap into the divine. Like you can channel like the Lord, and he will direct you.
Imagine, if it helps, just imagine doing this in a game of D&D. You know, you have a character that's an acolyte of a god. They have to make a decision. Yes.
Level 20 clerics can roll a D20, and on a 20, their god actually intervenes in whatever situation they're doing.
Yes, like that. This is the belief.
Oh, Ben,
I like how the way you described it in the mechanics of the universe of D&D kind of is what it's like. Like.
Jesus, take the wheel, but not really. You still need to drive, Ben.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. Just give me a second, because I want to talk about this, because you talked about your things. Sometimes you feel like the decisions are important, and you believe that your God cares about you, and so you ask for his opinion on what you're doing. There's a way that we have for doing that. I've done it at points in my life when I decided what college to go to, or whether or not to be a missionary for the church, or who to marry, or whether or not to join the military.
You were a missionary because it was expected of you. You went to BYU because you were raised in Mormon, and that's the place you go when you're Christian. And you married your wife because she said yes. Like, I'm not trying to minimize those decisions. I'm trying to be flippant for comedy on the podcast. And I understand that you're a person of faith and that this is a thing. And this is where we fundamentally disagree on this, because where you see having a divine assistance from a being that has more knowledge and sight and understanding than you.
Yes. Good. Well said.
All I can see, because all right, from my perspective, that being isn't a thing. And so all I see is that you're kicking the decision to your subconscious.
Kinda. So this came up, and I was you in this scenario. When we were trying to make the decision about the TV, my wife finally goes, I don't know, should we pray about it? And I said, what does God care which TV we get?
I feel like God has bigger fish to fry, like right at this moment. I didn't really say
that. I'm just like, what would you say if your kids came to you and said, hey, which TV should I buy? You just be like, I don't know, whatever makes you happy and you can afford. You decide.
Yeah, that's what makes you happy. What can you afford? What are your requirements? Listen, there's a lot of things we can do to narrow this list down. And then if you get to 4, like you're talking about, you got to 6, you would have been equally happy with all 6. And you even asked, would rolling a D6 be a completely valid decision-making option to break the tie? Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't it be?
Okay, forbear for a second. Let me read you a brief passage of our scripture that talks about this decision-making process. This is the voice of God telling us how to do this. Behold, I say unto you, you must study it out in your mind, and then you must ask me if it be right. And if it is right, I will cause that your bosom shall burn within you, therefore you shall feel that it is right. But if it be not right, you shall have no such feelings, but you shall have a stupor of thought. So that's the pattern you're supposed to be able to follow. Study it out, make a decision, bring it to God, who either give you a good feeling or a bad feeling, and then you can go ahead or not.
You're going to have those feelings. Okay.
I
get it.
That's another decision-making process you might involve. I don't always default to one. Like you said, most of the time it's happening so quickly and easily that it's automatic. And this one particularly kind of has to be a bit deliberate. You have to be like, hold on a sec, we're making a decision. Let's involve God.
Okay. So the secular version of this, I'm not trying to be flippant this time. The secular version of this is like, okay, I can't decide between these two things. Okay, I'm going to flip this coin. I'm going to cover it. And on the count of 3, I'll show you. All right. Flip the coin, cover it. 1, 2. Which one do you want it to be? And like in the moment, you're trying to capture, like, okay, you had a preference, whether you realized it or not. So which one did you hope it was?
Yeah, I guess so. There have been times where I've actually tried to write down, like, let's take a sheet of paper and draw a line down the center, and on this column we're going to write all the pros, and in this column we'll write all the cons. But at the end of that, you don't go, well, we picked the one with more pros or cons. You still don't know. Sometimes I'll do a game theory-ish one where you'd be like, well, here are our two options, and they make these 4 intersections, and these 3 are bad. Sometimes I'll do a military-style operational risk management one where I say, well, this is the most likely thing to happen, but this is the worst possible outcome, so let's pick something that's in the green.
I went to the car dealership to buy my electric car, and they had 3 on the lot. They had a blue one, a gray one, and a white one. And I told them I want the gray one. They said the gray one's got a flat tire. Like, okay, can you change the tire? Well, it's going to take like an hour. Like, I've already been here too long. I don't want that. Well, you can take the white one. It's the same price. Everything's the same. It's just white. Okay, cool. I don't care what color it is. And so I got the white one.
You made a car decision over a flat tire?
I made a car decision over another hour sitting around waiting for something to happen. Yes. And you know what, Ben? I'm not going to lie. Every once a month, probably, I'll look at the car and go, man, I wish this car was gray.
That's good. I think that's a good place to end. I had a few other ones I wanted to talk about, but I'm interested in what our listeners think.
You want to do a bonus episode on the other ones? Because, we went on so many stupid tangents and rabbit holes about this. We talked about
it's
buying
a hard
cars
thing to talk about.
Well, it's so big. It infests every portion of your life. Maybe. But let's carve some time out of our schedule the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about it on a bonus episode.
Okay.
Which you can only get access to if you're subscribed to our Patreon page.
Thanks, Josh. So, listeners, if you're interested in that and other bonus episodes we have, you can become a Patreon on our Patreon page. It's where our most loyal listeners go and contribute and help make the show happen, and we're very grateful to those that do.
If you want to join in the conversation, because Ben and I are switching roles apparently today, you can go to our Reddit, r/badatmagic. I think that's right. And then we have a Facebook page where every episode uploads with a gallery of highly curated and excellent images that Ben puts together, most of the time including an infographic that he spends way too much time on. And they're great, and you should go look at them and comment. It just adds to the show.
If you like the show, you like what we do, and you want to tune in and hear me be serious about all the important decisions we make in life and hear Josh mock me and come up with stupid things to say about it, you've come to the right place.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.